Tonight, nothing needs to be fixed. Nothing needs to be understood. Nothing needs to be achieved. The day is already over, even if your mind is still replaying it. Buddhism teaches that suffering does not come from pain alone. It comes from carrying what no longer belongs to this moment. You do not need to solve your life before you sleep. You only need to put the day down. So allow your body to rest where it is. Allow your breath to soften without effort. And allow these Zen teachings to gently loosen what you've been holding. There is nothing to remember. There is nothing to do right. Just listen and let go. Chapter 1. The day has already ended. In Zen, there is a simple truth that sounds almost too obvious to matter. Yet it changes everything when you allow it to sink in. When a moment passes, it is gone completely. It does not linger in the air. It does not hover around you. It does not wait to be revisited. It ends, cleanly and finally. The day you live today has already finished. Not metaphorically, not emotionally. Literally, the sun has moved. The hours have passed. The conditions that made today what it was no longer exist in the same form. Even if your mind is still busy, the day itself is not. The problem is not the day you lived. The problem is that your mind keeps dragging it forward. This is where suffering quietly begins. Your body understands that the day has ended. It has slowed. It has grown heavier. It is preparing to rest. But the mind has a habit of refusing to accept endings. It replays conversations. It reimagines situations. It rewrites moments, wondering what should have been said, what could have been done differently, what might happen next. Arguments replay themselves long after the voices have gone silent. Worries stretch into the future, even though the future has not arrived. Unfinished thoughts pretend they are urgent, even though nothing can be acted on right now. But none of these things exist anymore, except as mental echoes. An echo feels real, but it has no substance. It cannot touch you unless you keep listening to it. Zen does not fight echoes. It simply recognizes them for what they are, sounds without a source. A monk once explained it this way: when a bell is struck, the sound fills the air. When the sound fades, only silence remains. If you continue to hear the bell in your head afterward, that sound is no longer coming from the bell. It is coming from you. The same is true of the day. The events are over. The moments are finished. What remains is only memory, and memory is not reality. Memory is a picture the mind keeps repainting, often inaccurately, often unfairly, often without mercy. Zen practice is not about erasing memory. It is about knowing when memory has outlived its usefulness. Tonight, memory has nothing left to offer you. You cannot change what happened today. You cannot improve it. You cannot complete it. You cannot repair it in the darkness. Carrying it into the night does not make tomorrow better. It only makes rest harder. The monk does not relive the sunset after night arrives. He does not sit in his room replaying the colors of the sky, wishing they had lasted longer or wondering whether he appreciated them enough. He does not criticize the sunset for fading too quickly. He does not plan how he will watch the next one more carefully. He allows darkness to be darkness. This is not resignation. It is alignment. Zen teaches that each moment has its own nature. Day is for movement, sound, action, and interaction. Night is for stillness, quiet, and restoration. When you try to turn night into day by thinking, planning, and reliving, you create friction inside yourself. That friction is what you feel as restlessness. Notice how the world around you behaves. The streets grow quieter, lights dim, activity slows, even animals retreat. Nothing in nature argues with night. Only the human mind insists on staying awake long after its role is finished. Zen does not ask you to silence your thoughts by force. It asks you to notice that they are out of place right now, like a conversation continuing after everyone has left the room. You may notice thoughts such as "I should have done more today," or "Why did that happen?" or "Tomorrow I need to." These thoughts feel convincing because the mind is used to being in charge. But Zen gently questions their timing. Is this the moment for this thought? Right now, lying here, breathing, with the day already over, what purpose does this thought serve? Not everything that appears in the mind deserves attention. Zen is very clear about this. A thought can exist without being followed. A feeling can arise without being fed. An image can pass through awareness without becoming a story. Tonight, you are not being asked to solve your life. You are being asked to recognize that this moment does not belong to problem solving. The day had its chance. This moment is for release. Think of the mind like a person carrying a heavy bag long after reaching home. The house is quiet. The door is open. The floor is clear. Yet the person stands there still gripping the bag, as if putting it down would be dangerous. Zen asks a simple question: why are you still holding it? The bag contains today's conversations, today's mistakes, today's unfinished tasks, today's emotions. None of these require your grip anymore. Holding them does not protect you. It only exhausts you. Putting the bag down is not forgetting. It is resting. Many people fear that letting go of the day means they are being careless or irresponsible. Zen teaches the opposite. True responsibility includes knowing when effort no longer helps. Carrying what cannot be changed is not diligence. It is attachment. Attachment does not always look like desire. Sometimes it looks like rumination. Sometimes it looks like self-criticism. Sometimes it looks like worry, disguised as preparation. But at night, all attachment weighs the same. Zen monks train for years to understand this deeply, not intellectually, but physically. They learn to feel the difference between effort that is appropriate and effort that is unnecessary. At night, effort is unnecessary. This does not mean thoughts will stop instantly. They may continue for a while, just as waves continue briefly after the wind dies down. Zen does not rush this process. It trusts the natural settling. Your job is not to stop the waves. Your job is to stop stirring the water. When a thought about today arises, notice it without judgment. Do not argue with it. Do not analyze it. Simply recognize it as something that belongs to a moment that has already passed. You might quietly acknowledge that was today and then allow it to drift away. Not forcefully, not impatiently, just patiently. The more often you do this, the more the mind learns that night is not a place where old stories are rewarded with attention. Eventually, the mind grows tired of telling them. Zen understands something very important about peace. Peace is not created by adding calm thoughts. It appears when unnecessary thoughts are no longer carried. Tonight, you are allowed to stop carrying the day, not because the day was good, not because the day was bad, but because the day is over. You do not owe today anything anymore. You showed up as you could. You responded as you knew how. You did what was possible with the energy and awareness you had at the time. That is all Zen ever asks of anyone. Judging the day after it ends does not improve it. It only steals rest from the present. So allow yourself to follow the monk's example. Let darkness be darkness. Let stillness be stillness. Let the day remain where it belongs, behind you. Tonight, you are allowed to do the same. And as you stop dragging the day forward, you may notice something subtle. The body grows heavier. The breath slows without instruction. The mind begins to lose interest in holding on. This is not something you need to make happen. It happens naturally when you finally accept the simplest Zen truth of all. The day has already ended. Chapter 2. You do not need to carry today into tomorrow. Buddhism teaches something that sounds simple, yet feels deeply unfamiliar to most people. Tomorrow does not require your worry in advance. The mind believes it does, but this belief is a habit, not a truth. Long before planning became constant, life continued just fine. The future arrived on its own, moment by moment, without being forced. When you lie in bed at night and the mind begins to reach forward, replaying what might happen, rehearsing conversations, predicting outcomes, and preparing defenses, it feels like responsibility. It feels like intelligence. It feels like care. But Buddhism looks at this carefully and says something very different. It says that worrying about tomorrow at night does not protect you. It only exhausts you. Tomorrow is not built by thinking about it in the dark. It is shaped by clarity, energy, and presence when morning arrives. When you stay awake carrying tomorrow before it exists, you borrow energy from a time that has not come yet. And when that time finally does arrive, you meet it already tired. This is why Zen monks place such importance on rest, not as laziness, but as wisdom. A rested mind sees clearly. A tired mind mistakes fear for preparation and tension for control. Notice how the mind behaves as soon as the body begins to slow. It senses the quiet and rushes to fill it. Thoughts like, "I need to remember this. I can't forget that." Or "what if tomorrow goes wrong?" appear almost automatically. These thoughts are not warnings. They are habits formed by years of conditioning. The mind has been trained to believe that if it stops projecting into the future, something will be missed, something will fail, or something will fall apart. Buddhism gently challenges this assumption. It asks you to look at your own life honestly. How many times did worrying at night actually prevent a problem the next day? How many times did it only leave you restless, tense, and less capable? The Zen answer is not judgment. It is observation. Tomorrow does not benefit from your anxiety tonight. It benefits from your presence when it arrives. A monk preparing for a long journey does not stay awake all night rehearsing every possible obstacle. He rests, knowing that the path will reveal itself step by step. Each step will bring its own information, its own response, its own wisdom. To imagine the entire journey at once would only weigh him down before he even begins. Your life works the same way. The future does not ask you to carry it in advance. It asks you to meet it when it becomes present. Anything else is imagination pretending to be responsibility. When you lie here now, notice how little is actually required of you. There is no action you can take that will meaningfully improve tomorrow in this moment. There is no decision that must be finalized before sleep. There is no outcome that can be secured by staying awake longer. The mind may insist otherwise, but Buddhism invites you to test this belief rather than obey it. Zen teaches that when a thought arises, you are allowed to ask quietly and without aggression whether it belongs to this moment. A thought about tomorrow belongs to a moment that has not arrived. Carrying it now is like holding an umbrella indoors because it might rain next week. It adds weight without providing protection. This does not mean planning is wrong. It means planning has a time and place. Night is not that place. Night is for letting the nervous system settle, for allowing the body to repair itself, and for letting the mind release its grip. Many people confuse letting go with negligence. Zen sees it as precision. You are not abandoning tomorrow. You are placing it where it belongs, outside of this moment. When you stop dragging tomorrow into tonight, something subtle begins to happen. The mind initially resists. It may feel uncomfortable, as if something important is being ignored. This discomfort is not danger. It is withdrawal from a habit. Just as the body protests when you stop clenching muscles you did not realize you were holding, the mind protests when you stop rehearsing the future. But this protest fades when it is not fed. Buddhism teaches that peace is not achieved by controlling the future. It is discovered by releasing the illusion that the future is controllable right now. Tomorrow will arrive whether you worry or not. The only difference is how you arrive with it. A mind that rested meets the day openly. A mind that worried all night meets the day already defensive. Zen chooses openness. There is a story of a Zen student who once asked his teacher how to prepare for the challenges of tomorrow. The teacher replied by pouring him a cup of tea and saying nothing. When the cup was full, the teacher kept pouring until it overflowed. The student protested, saying the cup could hold no more. The teacher looked at him calmly and said, "You are like this cup. If you carry tomorrow into tonight, there will be no room to receive it when it comes. Tonight, you are allowed to empty the cup. You do not need to remind yourself of tasks. You do not need to rehearse conversations. You do not need to anticipate problems. These things will return naturally when they are useful. You do not lose them by resting. You only lose your grip on them temporarily. And this temporary release is what restores balance. As you lie here, you may notice thoughts attempting to pull you forward. Instead of following them, imagine gently placing them outside the room, not locking them away, not rejecting them, simply setting them aside, knowing they will be available later if needed. Buddhism does not fear postponement. It fears unnecessary suffering. Right now, carrying tomorrow is unnecessary suffering. The present moment is very small. It contains only breath, weight, and quiet. It does not contain deadlines, expectations, or outcomes. When you stay with what is small, the mind has nothing to grasp. This is why sleep arrives most easily when attention rests on what is immediate and simple. The future is complex. The present is uncomplicated. Zen does not rush you into sleep. It allows sleep to come when effort dissolves. And effort dissolves when you stop trying to manage time that is not here. You may notice that, as you stop carrying tomorrow, the body grows heavier. The breath becomes slower and deeper, without instruction. The mind begins to lose interest in planning. This is not something you are doing. It is something that happens when the burden is set down. Tomorrow does not need you right now. It will call for you when it arrives. And when it does, you will be more capable, more grounded, and more present, because you chose to rest instead of rehearse. For now, allow yourself to stay here. Allow the future to remain where it belongs. Allow the mind to learn gently and patiently that nothing is lost by letting go for the night. Tomorrow will come, but tonight is for rest, and rest begins the moment you stop carrying what does not belong to now. Chapter 3. The mind tires itself by holding. Buddhism teaches that the mind is not exhausted by thinking itself, but by the effort of holding on to thoughts. Thinking can be light and fluid when it is allowed to move naturally, but holding turns thought into weight. This is why the mind feels heavy at night, not because it is active, but because it refuses to release what it is gripping. During the day, the mind holds constantly. It holds conversations, responsibilities, identities, expectations, and emotions. It grips problems tightly, believing that tension equals control. By the time night arrives, the mind is already tired, yet it continues to clench out of habit. Zen looks at this pattern without criticism. It does not label the mind as weak or flawed. It simply observes that the mind has learned to equate holding with safety. When it lets go, it fears collapse. When it relaxes, it imagines danger, and so it keeps gripping long after the need has passed. This is why the mind feels restless when the body begins to rest. The body knows how to relax because it has done so its entire life. The mind, however, has forgotten that rest is possible without loss. Holding takes many forms. Sometimes it is obvious, like replaying an argument or worrying about a mistake. Other times it is subtle, like maintaining a sense of identity, repeating an internal narrative, or staying alert without reason. Even the attempt to fall asleep can become something the mind grips too tightly. Zen points out something important here. The mind does not need to be silenced. It needs to be unclenched. When you try to force the mind into stillness, you only create another form of holding. You grip silence instead of thoughts, and the tension remains. True rest comes not from control but from release. A Zen teacher once described the mind as a hand that has been clenched for so long. It has forgotten how to open. The solution is not to pry the fingers apart. The solution is to stop tightening them. At night, the mind tightens reflexively. It holds onto the day, onto tomorrow, onto who you think you are and who you think you must be. This holding feels automatic, but it is learned. And anything learned can be unlearned gently. Notice how a thought behaves when you do not grab it. It appears, lingers briefly, and fades. But when you hold it, when you repeat it, analyze it, or argue with it, it gains weight. It becomes solid. It feels important. Buddhism teaches that importance is often an illusion created by attention. The mind mistakes repetition for significance. Zen practice does not tell you to push thoughts away. It tells you to notice when you are holding them and to experiment with loosening your grip. This loosening is not an action. It is the absence of an action. You are not required to finish every thought. You are not required to resolve every feeling. You are not required to follow every story to its conclusion. These requirements are self-imposed. At night, the mind continues to work as if something depends on it. Zen gently reminds the mind that nothing is asking for effort right now. There is no emergency. There is no task. There is no threat that requires vigilance. The body understands this immediately. As soon as effort drops, the body begins to sink. Muscles soften. Breath deepens. Weight increases. The body is not confused about rest. The mind, however, resists because it fears emptiness. It believes that if it stops holding, something essential will disappear. Zen reassures the mind that nothing essential is lost when holding ends. Awareness remains. Presence remains. Life remains. What disappears is only unnecessary tension. There is a subtle difference between awareness and holding that Zen emphasizes deeply. Awareness is open and spacious. Holding is tight and narrow. Awareness allows things to come and go. Holding traps them. At night, you are invited to remain aware without holding. You can notice thoughts without owning them. You can feel sensations without controlling them. You can hear the mind without obeying it. This is not something to perform. It is something to allow. As you lie here, you may notice moments where the mind tightens around a thought. Perhaps a memory, a concern, or even a sensation in the body. Instead of reacting, simply notice the tightening itself. The moment you see it, it begins to loosen. Zen teaches that tension cannot survive awareness for long. It feeds on unconsciousness. When you notice holding, you interrupt the habit without effort. The mind may attempt to distract you with urgency. It may whisper that something is important, unresolved, or unfinished. Buddhism does not deny that these things exist. It simply asks whether now is the moment to carry them. Most things that feel urgent at night lose their urgency in the morning. This alone reveals their true nature. Holding is exhausting because it is continuous. The mind never rests when it is holding. It stays alert, tense, and vigilant. Over time, this becomes the default state. The mind forgets what openness feels like. Zen practice at night is a gentle reminder. You are allowed to stop gripping. Imagine placing a heavy object down after carrying it all day. There is a moment of unfamiliar lightness, almost a shock. The body feels strange without the weight. The mind feels the same when it releases holding. It may feel uncomfortable at first, as if something is missing. This discomfort is not danger. It is adjustment. The mind is adjusting to openness. When holding releases, thoughts become quieter, not because they are suppressed, but because there is no tension feeding them. The mind naturally slows when it is no longer working against itself. This is why Zen monks emphasize posture and breath at night, not as techniques to control the mind, but as signals to the nervous system that effort is no longer required. When the body rests, the mind receives permission to follow. You do not need to command the mind to sleep. You need to stop asking it to hold. As holding dissolves, you may notice gaps between thoughts. These gaps are not emptiness in a frightening sense. They are spaces of rest. The mind dips into them naturally when it feels safe enough to let go. Zen does not rush this process. It trusts the intelligence of the system. When holding ends, rest emerges on its own. It is important to understand that letting go is not an act of will. It is the absence of will. The more you try to let go, the more you hold on to the idea of letting go. Zen smiles at this paradox and invites patience. Simply notice when you are gripping and stop adding effort. That is enough. Over time, the mind learns that nothing collapses when it relaxes. The body continues breathing. The heart continues beating. Awareness continues observing. Life continues unfolding. The belief that holding is necessary slowly dissolves. At night, this dissolution feels like sinking. The edges of thought soften. Time becomes less defined. The sense of control loosens. This is not something to fear. It is the natural state of rest. Buddhism teaches that suffering is not caused by experience itself, but by clinging to experience. At night, clinging has no purpose. There is nothing to gain and nothing to protect. You are allowed to unclench completely. As the mind releases its grip, it begins to tire in a healthy way, the way muscles tire after being used appropriately. This tiredness is not strain. It is readiness for sleep. Sleep does not arrive by force. It arrives when holding ends. If thoughts continue to appear, let them pass without resistance. If holding returns, notice it gently and allow it to soften again. There is no failure here, only practice. Each moment of release teaches the mind that rest is safe. Eventually, the mind no longer needs instruction. It follows the body into stillness. Thoughts slow, awareness remains open, and sleep arrives quietly. Without announcement, the mind did not need to be fixed. It only needed to stop holding. And as holding fades, rest becomes inevitable. Chapter 4. Nothing is demanding you right now. Buddhism asks you to look very carefully at what is actually happening in this moment, not what the mind claims is happening. When you do this honestly, something becomes clear. Right now, nothing is demanding you. No one is calling your name. No task requires action. No situation needs your response. The sense of urgency you feel is not coming from reality. It is coming from habit. The mind has been trained to live in a state of constant readiness. Even when nothing is required, it stays alert, scanning for problems, rehearsing responses, preparing explanations. This state feels normal because it has been practiced for years. But normal does not mean necessary. Zen teaches that urgency without a present demand is a form of illusion. It feels real, but it has no object. During the day, demands are real. People speak to you, responsibilities appear. Decisions must be made. The mind serves a purpose. Then, it responds, calculates, plans, and protects. But when the day ends, the conditions that created those demands disappear. The mind, however, does not stop immediately. It keeps moving out of momentum. This momentum is what you are feeling now. Zen does not criticize this momentum. It simply points out that momentum is not direction. Just because the mind is moving does not mean it needs to keep moving. Right now, the room is quiet. The body is resting. The world has slowed. There is no external pressure asking you to do anything. Yet the mind may still feel tense, as if something important is being neglected. Buddhism invites you to question this feeling gently. What exactly is being neglected right now? Often when you look closely, there is no clear answer. There is only a vague sense that you should be doing something, remembering something, or preparing for something. This sense is not a message from reality. It is a leftover signal from a system that has not powered down yet. Zen training involves learning the difference between real demands and imagined ones. A real demand is clear, specific, and present. An imagined demand is vague, repetitive, and future-oriented. At this moment, there is no clear demand. The mind resists this realization because it equates rest with risk. It believes that if vigilance drops, something bad might happen. This belief developed for survival in a very different environment. Buddhism acknowledges this history without letting it control the present. Zen teaches that safety is not created by constant alertness. Safety is created by responding appropriately to what is actually happening. And right now, what is happening is rest. Nothing is asking for your attention. You may notice thoughts arising that try to create a sense of duty. Thoughts like, I should think this through, I can't forget that, or I need to be ready. These thoughts are not instructions. They are echoes of a mind, accustomed to being needed. The truth is simple and quiet. You are not needed right now. This does not diminish your value. It restores your balance. Zen monks often speak about the beauty of being unnecessary. During rest, nothing depends on you, and because nothing depends on you, you are free. Free to breathe, free to soften, free to let the mind slow without guilt. Modern life rarely offers this permission explicitly. Buddhism offers it internally. Nothing is demanding you right now, and that is not a failure. It is a natural pause. When you truly recognize that nothing is required, the body responds immediately. Muscles release tension they did not know they were holding. The breath deepens without effort. The heartbeat becomes slower and steadier. These changes happen automatically when the nervous system receives a signal of safety. Zen teaches that safety is not declared through words. It is felt through the absence of pressure. Pressure always has a source. Either something is genuinely happening, or the mind is imagining what might happen. At night, most pressure comes from imagination. The mind may argue that rest must be earned, that you have not done enough, that something remains unfinished. Buddhism does not deny that unfinished things exist. It simply says that unfinished things do not require attention at all times. A bowl can be set down even if it is not empty. A book can be closed even if it is not finished. A day can end even if everything was not resolved. Zen respects incompletion. In fact, Zen understands that life itself is incomplete by nature. There is always something left undone, unsaid, or unresolved. If rest depended on completion, no one would ever sleep. So Buddhism makes a radical claim. Rest is not the reward for finishing. Rest is a condition for continuing. Tonight, nothing is demanding that you prove yourself. Nothing is asking for improvement. Nothing is asking for explanation. You do not need to justify your rest. Notice how the mind reacts to this idea. There may be resistance, disbelief, or discomfort. This reaction does not mean the idea is wrong. It means the mind is unfamiliar with being off duty. Zen practice is not about forcing acceptance. It is about allowing unfamiliar truths to sit quietly until the mind grows accustomed to them. You are allowed to be off duty. Even the role you play in your own life can be set aside temporarily. You do not need to manage your identity tonight. You do not need to maintain an image, replay a narrative, or evaluate yourself. Nothing is watching. Nothing is measuring. Nothing is judging. This realization can feel unsettling at first, like stepping into open space. But Zen teaches that open space is where rest happens. Cluttered space demands attention. Open space invites stillness. The mind may try to fill the space immediately because it is used to being occupied. Let it try. There is no need to stop it forcefully. Simply notice that even these attempts are not demanded by anything real. As you continue to lie here, gently remind yourself, not as an affirmation but as an observation, that nothing is required of you right now. Not later. Not in a few minutes. Now. This reminder does not need to be repeated constantly. It only needs to be felt. When nothing is demanded, effort fades. When effort fades, resistance dissolves. When resistance dissolves, sleep begins to approach naturally. Zen does not chase sleep. It removes the obstacles that keep it away. Urgency is one of those obstacles. Obligation is another. Self-imposed duty is another. Tonight you are not obligated to carry anything. If a thought appears asking for attention, ask quietly whether it is a real demand or a habit. Most thoughts at night are habits. They repeat because they have been repeated before. They do not repeat because they are needed. Habits lose strength when they are not reinforced. By resting without guilt, you teach the mind something important. You teach it that stillness is safe. You teach it that being unoccupied is not dangerous. You teach it that nothing falls apart when you stop responding to imagined demands. Over time, the mind learns to stand down on its own. This learning does not happen through force. It happens through experience. Right now, you are experiencing a moment where nothing is demanded of you. Let that experience deepen. Let it sink into the body. Let it quiet the mind. There is nowhere to go. There is nothing to do. There is nothing to fix. This moment is complete as it is. And because nothing is demanding you right now, you are free to rest fully, without explanation, without preparation, and without concern. Rest is not avoidance. It is alignment with what is real. And what is real right now is simple. Nothing is demanding you. Chapter 5. The body knows how to sleep. Buddhism teaches that wisdom does not live only in thought. It lives in the body as well. Long before the mind learned to analyze, plan, and worry, the body already knew how to rest. Sleep is not something the body has to be taught. It is something the body remembers when it is not interrupted. From the moment you were born, the body understood sleep instinctively. It did not need instructions. It did not need effort. It did not need reassurance. It responded naturally to cycles of light and dark, activity and stillness. Only later did the mind begin to interfere. Zen observes this interference without blame. It recognizes that the mind means well. It believes it is helping, but at night, the mind often forgets that it is not required. The body does not ask the mind for permission to sleep. It only asks that the mind stop disrupting the process. Notice how many things your body does without conscious involvement. Your heart beats. Your lungs breathe. Digestion continues. Healing occurs. All of this happens whether or not you think about it. Sleep belongs to the same category. It is a natural function, not an achievement. When you try to make yourself sleep, you place the mind in charge of something it does not control. The mind responds by trying harder, watching the clock, measuring progress, and evaluating whether sleep is happening fast enough. This effort creates tension, and tension is the one thing sleep cannot coexist with. Zen does not teach techniques to force sleep. It teaches trust in the body's intelligence. The body is not confused about rest. It becomes confused only when it receives mixed signals. When the body is lying down in darkness, but the mind is alert, tense, and vigilant, the body hesitates. It waits for clarity. The clarity it needs is simple. It needs to know that it is safe to let go. Safety is not communicated through thought. It is communicated through stillness, through the absence of urgency, through the release of effort. As you lie here, notice how the body naturally begins to change when effort drops. Muscles soften slightly. The jaw loosens, the shoulders sink. The breath slows and deepens. These changes are not commands you issue. They are responses to permission. Buddhism emphasizes permission more than control. You are not making the body sleep. You are allowing it. Zen monks often speak about the importance of getting out of the body's way. This does not mean ignoring discomfort or pain. It means not adding unnecessary tension on top of what is already present. At night, the body may hold residual tension from the day. This tension does not need to be fixed. It needs to be allowed to release at its own pace. When the mind stops interfering, the body begins to unwind naturally. Imagine a knot that has been tightened slowly over many hours. Pulling on it only tightens it further. But when you stop pulling, the fibers begin to loosen on their own. The body works the same way. Sleep is not the result of effort. It is the result of non-effort. This idea can feel uncomfortable because the mind is accustomed to doing. It measures worth through action. It believes progress requires exertion, but Buddhism offers a different understanding. Some processes unfold only when effort ceases. Falling asleep is one of them. When the mind is quiet enough, the body begins to take over. Sensations become heavier. Awareness becomes softer. The edges of thought blur. This transition cannot be forced. It happens when the conditions are right. Zen does not rush this transition. It trusts it. If the body is not sleeping yet, it is not failing. It is simply still unwinding. The day's movements, stresses, and demands take time to settle. There is no deadline. There is no correct speed. The mind's impatience is often what keeps the body awake. Buddhism teaches patience as a form of kindness. Being patient with the body means not demanding immediate sleep. It means allowing rest to arrive when it is ready. Notice how the body responds when it is not judged. When there is no criticism for being awake. When there is no pressure to perform, the body softens under acceptance. You are not required to monitor your sleep. You are not required to track how long it takes. You are not required to succeed at resting. These requirements exist only in the mind. The body sleeps best when it is not being watched. Zen monks often say that sleep comes easiest when you stop looking for it. This is not a trick. It is a recognition of how natural systems operate. They function best without surveillance. As you lie here, allow the body to feel heavy without trying to make it heavier. Allow warmth to spread without directing it. Allow breath to find its own rhythm. The body knows what to do. If thoughts arise, let them pass without engaging. They do not need to be solved for the body to rest. The body does not wait for the mind to finish its conversations. Over time, the body begins to signal that it is ready. The signals are subtle. Sense of sinking, a softening of awareness, a feeling of drifting. These signals appear naturally when the body is trusted. Zen encourages listening to these signals without grabbing them. The moment you try to capture them, the mind returns to effort. Simply allow them to come and go. There is a deep relief in realizing that you do not have to manage sleep. You do not have to achieve it. You do not have to earn it. Sleep is not a reward. It is a function. When you trust the body responds with rest. This trust takes practice, especially if sleep has been difficult. But practice does not mean trying harder. It means letting go more consistently. Each night you allow the body to lead. You weaken the habit of control. Each moment of non-effort teaches the nervous system that rest is safe. Eventually, the body does not wait for permission anymore. It simply sleeps. As this happens, the mind fades into the background, not because it has been silenced, but because it is no longer needed. The body takes over, gently and confidently. Buddhism teaches that wisdom often looks like simplicity. Trusting the body is simple, but it requires unlearning interference. Tonight you are invited to unlearn just a little. You do not need to guide your breath. You do not need to relax your muscles deliberately. You do not need to think about sleep. You only need to stop interrupting. As the body continues to soften, allow yourself to notice the sense of support beneath you, the surface holding you, the weight being carried for you, the effort being removed. You are not holding yourself up right now. Something else is doing that for you. The body understands this immediately. It releases, and as the body releases, sleep becomes less of an event and more of a transition, something you drift into without realizing when it began. Zen does not announce this moment. It lets it happen quietly. Trust the body. It has done this before. It knows the way. Chapter 6. Regret belongs to the past, not the bed. Buddhism teaches that regret is not a sign of wisdom. It is a sign of attachment to a moment that no longer exists. The mind returns to the past because it believes there is something there that can still be changed. But the past is complete. It does not accept revision. It does not respond to correction. It remains exactly as it is, regardless of how often it is revisited. At night, regret feels heavier than it does during the day. In the quiet, the mind amplifies its voice. Moments replay themselves with sharper edges. Words sound harsher. Decisions feel more consequential. This intensity does not mean the regret is more accurate. It means the mind is tired and more vulnerable to its own narratives. Zen does not tell you that regret is wrong. It tells you that regret has a proper place and time. Reflection during the day can lead to insight and change. Regret at night leads only to exhaustion. When you lie in bed replaying what you said or did not say, what you chose or failed to choose, you are not learning anymore. You are rehearsing pain. Buddhism is very clear about this distinction. Learning requires presence and energy. Regret at night has neither. The mind often disguises regret as responsibility. It claims that by revisiting mistakes, you are being accountable. But accountability requires action. At night, there is no action available. Without action, regret becomes self-punishment. Zen asks a simple question. What is the purpose of this thought right now? If the thought cannot lead to understanding or action, then it has lost its usefulness. Carrying it further only deepens suffering. Regret belongs to the past because it points backward. The bed belongs to the present because it is where the body rests now. Mixing the two creates confusion. The mind tries to live in two times at once, and the body pays the price. Buddhism teaches respect for time. Each moment has its role. The past is for learning. The present is for experiencing. The future is for responding. Night is for resting. When regret enters the bed, it is out of place. Notice how regret behaves. It rarely arrives alone. It brings judgment, comparison, and imagined alternatives. The mind constructs entire scenarios of how things could have gone differently. These scenarios feel real because the mind does not distinguish between memory and imagination very well. Zen points out that imagined alternatives have no substance. They do not exist anywhere except in thought. Holding on to them creates a world that is entirely mental, yet emotionally painful. The monk understands this deeply. He does not deny that mistakes occur. He accepts them fully, but he does not carry them beyond their time. Acceptance does not mean approval. It means recognition. What happened has already happened. Repeating it in the mind does not honor it. It only prolongs it. At night, the mind often becomes harsher. It speaks in absolutes. It labels moments as failures. It rewrites your identity based on single events. Buddhism sees this as a loss of perspective caused by fatigue. A tired mind is not a reliable narrator. Zen practice at night involves learning when not to listen. This does not require pushing regret away. Resistance gives it strength. Instead, Zen suggests acknowledging regret as something that arose earlier and is now lingering without purpose. You might notice a thought like, "I should have known better." This thought may feel convincing, but ask gently whether this belief serves any function right now. If the answer is no, then the thought can be set aside without argument. Buddhism teaches that setting aside is different from suppressing. Suppression creates tension. Setting aside creates space. Imagine placing an object on a shelf, not throwing it away, not clinging to it, simply putting it somewhere it does not need to be carried. Regret can be placed there too. The mind may fear that if regret is released, it will be forgotten and repeated. Zen reassures the mind that understanding is not lost through rest. True learning integrates itself without force. If something needs to be remembered, it will return when it is useful. Regret often masks a deeper desire for control. The mind wants to go back and adjust outcomes to feel safer now. But the past cannot provide safety. Only presence can. Buddhism teaches that peace is found by meeting reality as it is, not by correcting it mentally. The bed is not a courtroom. It is not a place for judgment. It is a place for release. You do not need to evaluate yourself tonight. You do not need to decide whether you did enough or were enough. Those questions belong to a different moment. Right now, the only task is rest. As you allow regret to loosen, you may feel resistance. The mind may insist that letting go is irresponsible. This insistence is a habit formed by years of self-criticism. Zen meets this habit with patience. Nothing is lost by resting. If regret returns, notice how it feels in the body. It may tighten the chest, clench the jaw, or create a sinking sensation. Instead of analyzing the story, stay with the sensation. Sensations dissolve faster than narratives when they are not fed. The body does not store regret the way the mind does. When attention shifts away from the story, the body releases tension naturally. Buddhism teaches that emotions pass when they are not resisted or rehearsed. Regret is no different. Over time, the mind begins to see that nothing terrible happens when regret is not entertained. The night remains calm. The body rests. Life continues. This realization weakens regret. Sits hold. Zen monks often reflect on mistakes during daylight hours and release them completely at night. They understand that carrying regret into sleep poisons rest and dulls insight. Rest is not escape. It is preparation. When you sleep well, clarity returns. Perspective widens. Compassion deepens. Regret loses its sharpness because understanding increases. Tonight, you are allowed to stop punishing yourself for being human. Every life contains imperfect moments. Buddhism does not seek perfection. It seeks awareness. Awareness does not require suffering. As the body sinks further into rest, allow regret to remain where it belongs. In the past, not in the bed, not in the breath, not in the body. The past has already received your experience. It does not need your energy now. The present moment is asking for gentleness. Let the bed hold you. Let the body rest. Let the mind loosen its grip. There will be time for reflection later, when it can serve you. Tonight is not that time. Tonight is for rest. And as regret fades into the background, you may notice a quiet relief, a softening, a sense of being unburdened. This relief is not avoidance. It is alignment with wisdom. Regret belongs to the past. The bed belongs to rest. Chapter 7. Thoughts lose power when unobserved. Buddhism teaches that thoughts do not have power on their own. They gain power only when they are watched closely, followed carefully, and believed without question. A thought that appears and passes unnoticed leaves no trace. A thought that is examined, repeated, and judged becomes heavy and persistent. At night, thoughts feel stronger not because they are more important, but because the environment is quieter. With fewer distractions, the mind turns inward, and every thought seems louder than it really is. Zen understands this and does not try to silence the mind. It simply changes the relationship with what appears. The mind assumes that noticing a thought means engaging with it. Buddhism gently corrects this assumption. You can notice a thought without entering it. You can hear it without answering it. You can allow it to pass without learning its name. Zen often compares thoughts to clouds moving across the sky. When you stare at a cloud, you begin to see shapes, stories, and meanings. When you stop watching it, it moves on without leaving anything behind. The sky is never harmed by clouds, no matter how dramatic they appear. At night, the mind forgets that it is the sky and believes it is the clouds. When you observe a thought closely, it feels solid. It feels personal. It feels urgent. But when attention softens, the thought loses its structure. It becomes vague, then faint, then gone. This is not because you forced it away, but because it was never stable to begin with. Buddhism teaches impermanence not as a concept, but as an experience. Thoughts arise due to conditions, and when conditions change, they dissolve. Attention is one of those conditions. When attention withdraws, thoughts weaken. This is why Zen does not argue with thoughts. Arguing is a form of attention. Suppressing is also attention. Even judging a thought as bad gives it energy. The most effective response is quiet. Disinterest. Disinterest is not rejection. It is release. At night, many thoughts appear that seem to demand resolution. The mind insists that if they are not addressed now, they will cause problems later. Zen invites you to test this belief. Notice how many thoughts from previous nights never returned and caused no harm at all. The mind forgets how many thoughts dissolve naturally when left alone. Thoughts survive by being fed. They feed on repetition, analysis, and emotional reaction. When these are absent, thoughts grow weak. Zen practice at night is not about monitoring every thought. That would create effort. It is about allowing attention to rest elsewhere, gently and without struggle. You may notice that when attention rests on the sensation of the body, thoughts begin to fade into the background. This is not because the body is suppressing the mind, but because attention has moved to something stable and present. Thoughts belong to time. Sensations belong to now. When attention stays with what is immediate, thoughts lose their grip. Buddhism teaches that awareness does not need to follow everything it notices. Awareness can remain open and still, while thoughts move through it like distant sounds. Imagine sitting near a road late at night. Cars pass occasionally. You hear them, but you do not chase them. You do not analyze where they came from or where they are going. You let the sound pass. Thoughts can be treated the same way. At first, the mind may protest. It may pull attention back to a thought repeatedly. This does not mean you are failing. It means the habit is strong. Habits weaken through patience, not force. Each time you allow a thought to pass without engagement, you weaken the habit slightly. Over time, this weakening accumulates. Zen monks understand this deeply. They do not expect instant silence. They expect gradual quieting through non-participation. It is important to understand that you do not need to stop observing entirely. You only need to stop focusing sharply. Soft awareness allows thoughts to pass. Sharp focus locks them in place. At night, soften attention. When a thought appears, allow it to be there without naming it. Do not label it as worry, memory, or planning. Labels create structure. Structure gives thoughts stability. Without labels, thoughts lose shape. Buddhism teaches that the mind creates meaning constantly. At night, much of this meaning-making is unnecessary. Zen allows meaning to rest. You may notice gaps between thoughts beginning to appear. These gaps are not something you create. They appear naturally when thoughts are not being fed. In these gaps, there is a sense of quiet presence that feels different from thinking. This presence is not empty. It is calm. Zen does not try to hold on to these gaps. Holding would turn them into another object. Instead, it allows them to come and go, like everything else. As attention continues to soften, thoughts appear less frequently and feel less convincing. They may still arise, but they no longer pull you in. They feel distant, like conversations in another room. This distance is not dissociation. It is perspective. Buddhism teaches that suffering comes not from thoughts themselves, but from believing they require response. When belief fades, suffering fades with it. At night, you are allowed to stop responding. If a thought repeats, let it repeat without commentary. Repetition without engagement eventually exhausts itself. The mind grows bored when it is not rewarded. Zen trusts boredom as a path to rest. Eventually, thoughts slow not because they were defeated, but because there is no reason for them to continue. Attention is no longer available to sustain them. This slowing feels like sinking. Awareness remains, but it becomes softer and wider. Time feels less important. The sense of self becomes lighter. Sleep approaches quietly in this state. You do not need to watch for it. Watching would sharpen attention again. Simply allow awareness to remain open and gentle. Thoughts will continue to lose power as long as they are not observed closely. They will pass the way all things pass when left alone. And as thoughts fade into the background, the body continues resting, the breath continues flowing, and the mind naturally drifts towards sleep. Nothing needs to be forced. Nothing needs to be fixed. Thoughts lose power when unobserved, and rest arrives when nothing is being held. Chapter 8. Nothing you are avoiding will find you in sleep. Buddhism teaches that fear survives by anticipation. It lives in the space between now and what the mind imagines might happen. At night, when the world becomes quiet, this anticipation often grows louder. The mind believes that if it relaxes, something unwanted will catch up. Something unresolved will appear. Something dangerous will surface the moment vigilance drops. Zen looks at this fear carefully and asks a simple question. What exactly are you protecting yourself from right now? Most of the time, there is no clear answer. There is only a vague sense of threat without an object. This is not intuition. It is habit. The mind has learned to stay alert because it confuses awareness with tension. During the day, alertness serves a purpose. At night, it becomes unnecessary. Yet the mind struggles to stand down. It believes that sleep is a form of surrender, and surrender feels unsafe to a system trained to survive by control. Buddhism gently corrects this misunderstanding. Sleep is not surrender to danger. It is surrender to what already is. Nothing new arrives, simply because you rest. What you are avoiding during the day does not stalk you at night. Problems do not ambush you in sleep. Unfinished conversations do not break into the body. The mind creates this illusion because it has not learned how to trust stillness. Zen teaches that fear requires participation. It needs attention, imagination, and belief. When these are withdrawn, fear weakens. At night, fear often disguises itself as responsibility. It says that if you do not stay alert, something important will be missed. But Zen asks you to look honestly at your own experience. How many nights have passed where nothing terrible happened while you slept? How many times did the mind warn you of danger that never arrived? The mind remembers threats more vividly than safety. This is how it stays in charge. Buddhism invites you to rebalance this memory. Sleep has visited you thousands of times. Each time the body entered a state of vulnerability, and each time you returned safely. This is not luck. It is the natural order. Zen trusts repetition over imagination. When you lie here now, the mind may whisper that something unresolved is waiting, that something avoided is lurking just beyond awareness. But notice how vague this sense is. It has no name, no shape, no location. It is a feeling without content. Fear without content cannot harm you. Zen does not ask you to confront what you are avoiding at night. Night is not for confrontation. Night is for rest. Whatever needs to be faced will present itself clearly when the time is right. Avoidance does not end through vigilance. It ends through clarity. And clarity requires rest. The mind fears that if it sleeps, avoidance will become permanent. Buddhism teaches the opposite. When the mind rests, it becomes more capable of seeing what truly matters. Sleep does not strengthen avoidance. It dissolves confusion. At night, the mind often imagines that problems gain power when ignored. Zen teaches that most problems gain power when over-imagined. Notice how fear behaves when you stop feeding it. It may flare briefly, trying to regain attention. This flare is not danger. It is habit reacting to change. Zen practice is not about reassurance through words. It is about reassurance through experience. The experience here is simple. You are lying down. The body is supported. The environment is still. There is no immediate threat. Reality is calm. The mind may try to pull you into imagined scenarios, replaying difficult moments or projecting uncomfortable outcomes. These scenarios feel vivid because the mind is creative, not because they are real. Zen reminds you that imagination is not prophecy. Nothing you are avoiding will find you in sleep, because sleep does not move toward anything. It is a settling inward. It is a return to the body. What belongs to the outside world stays outside. When you sleep, the body closes certain doors naturally. Sensory input reduces. Muscle tone softens. Awareness turns inward. The system shifts from defense to repair. This shift is not dangerous. It is essential. Buddhism teaches that fear cannot survive when the body is deeply at rest. Fear needs tension. It needs alertness. It needs the sense that something must be done. When effort drops, fear loses its footing. You may notice that as the body relaxes, fear begins to feel distant. Not gone entirely, but less convincing. This distance is important. It shows you that fear is not the environment. It is a mental activity. Zen does not try to eliminate fear. It allows fear to become irrelevant. If a thought arises saying that sleep will make things worse, notice that this thought has appeared many times before and has never proven itself true. The mind repeats warnings because repetition gives them authority. Authority does not equal accuracy. The body does not fear sleep. Only the mind does, and even the mind fears it only because it has not practiced trusting it. Zen monks sleep deeply, not because they have no problems, but because they do not bring problems into the night. They understand that the night cannot solve what belongs to the day. You are allowed to follow this wisdom. You do not need to stand guard over your life while you sleep. Life does not require that kind of protection. The body has its own intelligence. The world continues without your supervision. This realization may feel unfamiliar. The mind may resist it. That resistance is simply the last echo of vigilance. Let it fade. As you rest here, notice how the idea of being chased by unresolved things begins to lose clarity. The more you stay with the body, the less convincing the fear becomes. The body lives in the present. The present is safe enough. Nothing you are avoiding is approaching you now. Nothing is waiting behind the darkness. Nothing needs to be anticipated. This is not denial, it is discernment. Zen teaches that real danger announces itself clearly. Imagined danger whispers endlessly. At night, whispers do not deserve your attention. Allow the body to continue sinking. Allow the breath to remain natural. Allow the mind to stop scanning. Scanning is effort. Effort is unnecessary. Unnecessary effort dissolves into rest. As this happens, you may feel a sense of relief, as if something has finally been put down. This relief is not foolish. It is wisdom returning to the body. Sleep approaches not because fear has been defeated, but because fear has nothing to attach to. Nothing you are avoiding will find you in sleep. Sleep is not where problems wait. Sleep is where the body restores itself so that life can be met clearly again. For now, there is no need to watch, prepare, or defend. The night is quiet, the body is safe enough, and rest is allowed to arrive without interference. Chapter 9. You are not your inner voice. Buddhism teaches that one of the deepest causes of suffering is mistaken identity. The mind speaks, and you assume the speaker is you. A thought appears, and you treat it as truth. A judgment arises, and you feel judged. Over time, this confusion becomes so familiar that it feels natural, even unquestionable. Zen begins by questioning this quietly, without confrontation. It asks you to notice something simple. If you can hear a voice in the mind, then something is listening, and the listener is not the voice. At night, this distinction becomes especially important because the inner voice often grows louder in the quiet. With fewer distractions, the commentary becomes more noticeable. It narrates, evaluates, remembers, predicts, and criticizes. It may sound confident, urgent, or authoritative, but Zen reminds you that volume does not equal truth. The inner voice is an activity, not an identity. During the day, the voice blends into action. At night, it floats freely, unanchored by reality. This is why it feels more convincing and more intrusive. The mind has space to speak without interruption. Buddhism does not attempt to silence this voice. It simply removes its authority. You are not required to obey every sound you hear. The inner voice has no obligation to be accurate, kind, or useful. It repeats what it has learned. It imitates past conversations. It echoes cultural pressure. It recycles old fears. It speaks because speaking is its function, not because it has something important to say. Zen teaches that awareness is prior to thought. Awareness is present before the voice begins and remains after it fades. Awareness does not argue, it does not comment, it simply notices. When you rest in awareness, the voice loses its center stage. At night, the voice often tries to define you. It tells stories about who you are, what you failed at, what you should have been, or what might happen. These stories feel personal because they use familiar language, but familiarity does not make them true. The voice is not a witness. It is a storyteller. Zen monks learn to hear the voice without believing it. They allow it to speak the way a radio plays in another room, audible, but not commanding. You can practice this gently now. Notice the next thought that appears. Do not analyze it. Do not judge it. Simply notice that it appeared. The moment you notice it, you are no longer inside it. You are observing it. This observation does not require effort. It is already happening. Buddhism teaches that liberation begins with this recognition. Thoughts are events. You are the space in which they occur. At night, the mind resists this idea because it is accustomed to being in control. It believes that if it is not listened to, something important will be lost. Zen reassures the mind that nothing essential depends on constant narration. Life continues without commentary. The body breathes without the voice. The heart beats without the voice. Sleep arrives without the voice. The voice is not required for rest. As you lie here, you may notice how the voice changes tone when it is not engaged. It may become repetitive. It may grow quieter. It may jump from topic to topic. This behavior reveals something important. The voice is not stable. It does not know what it wants. It simply wants attention. Attention is what gives the voice substance. When attention softens, the voice becomes thinner, its sentences lose momentum, its urgency fades. Zen does not fight the voice. It starves it gently. You are allowed to let the voice speak into emptiness. This does not mean suppressing thought. Suppression creates tension. Zen allows thought to arise and pass without interference. The key difference is identification. When you identify with the voice, every thought feels like a command. When you disidentify, thoughts feel optional. At night, optional thoughts lose their appeal. The inner voice may try to reclaim authority by becoming emotional. It may criticize. It may worry. It may dramatize. These are strategies, not truths. Buddhism teaches that emotions amplify thoughts, but they do not validate them. A frightened voice is not a wise voice. A loud voice is not a true voice. A familiar voice is not necessarily your own. You are the listener, not the narrator. This realization does not remove the voice instantly. It removes your obligation to follow it. Over time, the voice learns that it does not need to perform. Zen practice is patient. It does not demand immediate silence. It allows the voice to exhaust itself. As the body relaxes further, the voice begins to slow. It may pause between sentences. It may trail off mid-thought. These pauses are natural when attention is no longer feeding the narrative. In the pauses, there is a sense of quiet presence that feels different from thinking. This presence is not blank. It is calm and receptive. Zen does not ask you to hold on to this presence. Holding would turn it into another object. Simply allow it to be there. If the voice returns, let it return. It will leave again. The more you stop identifying with it, the less convincing it becomes. Buddhism teaches that identity is not located in thought. It is located in awareness. Awareness does not age, does not judge, does not worry. It simply is. At night, you are invited to rest as awareness rather than as the voice. This rest feels different. It feels lighter, less personal, less tense. You may notice that when the voice fades, time feels less defined. The sense of self softens. This is not losing yourself. It is remembering a deeper layer of being. Sleep comes easily when the voice is no longer in charge. You do not need to make the voice stop. You do not need to correct it. You do not need to replace it with positive thoughts. All of these are forms of engagement. Disengagement is enough. As the night deepens, allow the voice to become just another sound. Let it float without center. Let it speak without audience. Eventually, like all sounds, it fades. What remains is simple awareness, resting quietly in the body. And from this place, sleep arrives without effort, without announcement, and without story. You were never the voice. You were always the one listening. And when the listener rests, the voice has nothing left to say. Chapter 10. Stillness is not empty. Buddhism teaches that many people fear stillness, not because it is uncomfortable, but because they misunderstand it. The mind has learned to associate stillness with absence, boredom, or loss. It imagines that when nothing is happening, something must be wrong. Zen quietly corrects this misunderstanding by revealing that stillness is not empty at all. It is full, but not noisy. During the day, fullness is measured by activity. Movement, conversation, achievement, and stimulation are treated as signs of life. When these fade at night, the mind assumes life is fading too. This assumption creates subtle anxiety, a feeling that something must be added to fill the quiet. Zen invites you to look directly at this quiet instead of escaping it. When you do, you may notice that stillness has a presence of its own. It is not blank. It is not dead. It is calm, steady, and receptive. It does not rush. It does not demand. It simply holds. The mind resists stillness because stillness does not give it a role. There is nothing to analyze, nothing to fix, nothing to improve. For a mind that has been trained to define itself through activity, this can feel unsettling. Buddhism does not see this as a problem. It sees it as an opportunity to rest from becoming. Stillness is where the mind stops performing. At night, when stimulation reduces, stillness naturally begins to surface. The mind often reacts by filling the space with thoughts, images, and memories. These are not necessary. They are reflexes, habits formed by years of avoiding quiet. Zen practice is the gentle art of staying. Staying with stillness does not require concentration. Concentration would be another form of effort. It requires only allowing quiet to exist without commentary. As you lie here now, notice the spaces between sensations, the pause between breaths, the quiet between thoughts, the background hum of awareness that does not move. These are not absences. They are subtle forms of presence. Buddhism teaches that the deepest peace is found not in pleasant sensations, but in the absence of disturbance. Stillness is the absence of disturbance. This is why stillness feels unfamiliar at first. The mind has grown accustomed to disturbance. It mistakes agitation for aliveness. Zen gently reorients this misunderstanding. Life does not disappear when movement stops. It deepens in stillness. The body continues its work. Healing happens. Systems recalibrate. Energy restores itself. None of this requires thought. In fact, thought often interferes. Stillness allows the body to speak its own language. At night, when the lights dim and the world quiets, stillness is not something you need to create. It is already here. The only thing required is that you stop pushing against it. The mind may try to label stillness as boring. This label is a defense mechanism. Boredom arises when the mind is denied stimulation, but still insists on activity. Zen allows the insistence to fade. When the insistence fades, boredom dissolves, and what remains is a gentle neutrality that feels safe and spacious. Stillness is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It does not impress. It simply is. This simplicity is why the mind often overlooks it. Buddhism teaches that simplicity is not lack. It is clarity. As attention settles into stillness, you may notice that time feels less defined. Minutes lose their edges. The sense of progression softens. This is not confusion. It is the nervous system shifting into rest. The mind may fear this shift because it resembles losing control. Zen reassures you that nothing essential is lost when control dissolves. What is lost is tension. Stillness does not erase awareness. It refines it. In stillness, awareness becomes wide rather than focused. It is no longer chasing objects. It rests as a field in which objects appear and disappear. This resting is deeply nourishing. Zen monks often sit for long periods doing nothing visible. To an observer, this may look empty. Internally, it is full of calm presence. At night, you are invited into the same quality of being without effort or discipline. You do not need to meditate. You do not need to focus. You do not need to maintain posture. You only need to allow stillness to be what it already is. The mind may occasionally interrupt with a thought, a sound, or a sensation. This does not break stillness. Stillness includes these interruptions. It is wide enough to hold them without disturbance. Buddhism teaches that peace is not the absence of experience. It is the absence of resistance to experience. Stillness is peace, because nothing is being resisted. As the body sinks further into rest, stillness becomes more tangible. It feels like a soft background supporting everything. Thoughts arise within it and fade back into it. Sensations appear and dissolve within it. Nothing needs to be done. The fear of emptiness begins to dissolve when you realize that stillness is not empty at all. It is quietly alive. It is gentle. It is safe enough. Sleep often arrives from within stillness, not as an event, but as a deepening. Awareness does not disappear suddenly. It simply becomes softer, less defined, less interested in form. Zen does not chase this deepening. It allows it. If sleep does not arrive immediately, that is not a failure. Stillness itself is rest. Even without sleep, the body benefits from this state. Buddhism teaches that rest has layers. Stillness is one of them. As the night continues, allow stillness to remain in the foreground. Let thoughts and sensations come and go without pulling you away. You are not waiting for anything. You are resting in what is already here. Stillness is not empty. It is the place where effort ends, where the body heals, where the mind stops performing, and where sleep begins naturally, without demand or direction. And as you remain here, supported by quiet presence, there is nothing more to do. Rest is already happening. Chapter 11. Letting go is not loss. Buddhism teaches that one of the deepest misunderstandings of the human mind is the belief that letting go means losing something important. The mind equates release with absence, as if whatever is released will never return and whatever is loosened will collapse. This belief keeps the mind gripping long after gripping serves no purpose. Zen looks directly at this fear and gently dissolves it. Letting go is not loss. Letting go is relief. Loss implies that something valuable is taken away. Letting go simply means you stop carrying what is no longer required. Nothing essential is removed. What is removed is strain. At night, the mind often tightens because it fears that if it lets go, it will forget something important, miss something critical, or lose control over outcomes. Zen asks you to examine this fear carefully. What exactly has been lost every night you have slept before? You have slept thousands of times. Each night, the body relaxed. Awareness softened. Control dissolved. And yet, you woke up intact. Your life did not disappear. Your responsibilities did not vanish. Your memories returned when needed. Nothing essential was lost. What was lost was only effort. Buddhism teaches that effort has its place. It is useful during action. It is harmful during rest. Carrying effort into sleep does not protect you. It depletes you. The mind resists letting go because it has learned to define itself by what it holds. Identity becomes tied to roles, problems, stories, and concerns. When these are released, even temporarily, the mind fears it will disappear too. Then reassures the mind that identity does not vanish when holding ends. It simply rests. You do not stop being you when you let go at night. You stop performing being you. This distinction is subtle but profound. The performance requires tension. The being does not. At night, nothing requires your performance. No one is watching. No outcome depends on your vigilance. You are allowed to step out of character. Letting go does not erase your responsibilities. It postpones them to a time when they can be handled skillfully. Buddhism teaches timing as wisdom. Holding on to something at the wrong time is not commitment. It is clinging. Clinging exhausts the mind and confuses the body. Zen monks train to recognize when effort becomes clinging. At night, effort almost always crosses this line. There is nothing to gain by holding on. The fear of loss often disguises itself as care. The mind says, if I let go, I don't care enough. Buddhism gently corrects this. Care does not require constant attention. True care includes rest. A gardener does not stand over the soil all night worrying about growth. He trusts the process. He knows that growth happens when conditions are right, not when watched. Your life grows the same way. Letting go at night creates the conditions for clarity, patience, and resilience. These qualities do not emerge from vigilance. They emerge from rest. The mind may argue that letting go feels irresponsible. Zen answers by pointing to reality. Exhaustion creates more mistakes than rest ever does. Tension clouds judgment. Fatigue narrows perspective. Letting go is not avoidance. It is preparation. At night, the body understands this intuitively. It wants to sink, soften, and release. The mind is the one that resists. When the mind finally follows the body, relief appears almost immediately. This relief can feel unfamiliar. It may even feel wrong at first, as if something important has been forgotten. This sensation is simply the nervous system adjusting to the absence of tension. Tension becomes familiar over time. Its absence feels strange, until the body remembers what ease feels like. Zen practice involves trusting this unfamiliar ease. When you let go, you may notice a gentle wave of softness move through the body. Muscles release. The breath deepens. The jaw unclenches. This is not collapse. It is alignment. Letting go is not falling apart. It is coming back together. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises from trying to hold what is already changing. At night, everything is changing toward rest. Resisting this movement creates friction. Letting go removes friction. You do not need to decide what to let go of. The body already knows. It releases what is unnecessary when the mind stops interfering. If thoughts arise saying that you should hold on a little longer, recognize these thoughts as fear speaking in familiar language. Fear does not mean danger. It means the habit is strong. Habits dissolve through repetition of release, not through force. Each time you let go, even slightly, the mind learns that nothing bad happens. Each time you rest without gripping, the nervous system records safety. Over time, letting go becomes easier, not because life becomes simpler, but because the mind becomes wiser. Zen does not aim to remove difficulty from life. It aims to remove unnecessary suffering. Holding on to the day, the future, and the self at night is unnecessary suffering. Tonight, you are allowed to stop carrying. Nothing important is being lost. Nothing essential is disappearing. Nothing valuable is slipping away. What is being released is only tension. As the body continues to rest, allow letting go to deepen naturally. Do not measure it. Do not monitor it. Monitoring is another form of holding. Simply allow the process to continue on its own. The mind may fade in and out. Awareness may soften. Boundaries may blur. This is not loss. This is rest unfolding. Sleep approaches easily when nothing is being guarded. Letting go is not loss. It is permission. And permission is what allows rest to become complete. Chapter 12. Even worry gets tired. Buddhism teaches that worry survives on repetition. It returns again and again, not because it is intelligent, but because it has not been allowed to exhaust itself. The mind believes that worry must be solved, corrected, or argued with. Zen teaches something very different. Worry does not need to be defeated. It needs to be allowed to run out of energy. At night, worry often feels endless. The same thoughts circle repeatedly, dressed in slightly different words, presenting the same concerns from new angles. This repetition creates the illusion of importance. The mind assumes that if a thought keeps returning, it must require attention. Zen questions this assumption gently. A thought that returns endlessly is often not asking for a solution. It is asking for rest. Worry is not strength. It is fatigue. expressing itself. During the day, worry is fueled by stimulation, interaction, and constant input. At night, these fuel sources disappear. The mind continues worrying out of habit, not necessity. Without reinforcement, worry begins to weaken naturally. Buddhism teaches patience with this process. You do not need to interrupt worry or push it away. Interruption adds energy. Pushing creates resistance. Both feed the very thing you want to quiet. Instead, Zen invites you to observe worry the way you would observe a candle burning down. You do not rush it. You do not protect the flame. You simply let it burn until it can burn no more. Worry consumes energy. When energy is no longer supplied, it fades. As you lie here, you may notice worry trying to hold your attention. It may present scenarios, questions, or fears. Instead of following these paths, notice the effort it takes to maintain them. Feel how tiring worry actually is. This tiredness is important. Worry pretends to be alert, but it is exhausted beneath the surface. It repeats itself because it lacks new material. It circles because it has nowhere to go. Zen understands that repetition is a sign of depletion, not urgency. If you allow worry to continue without engaging, something subtle happens. The thoughts lose detail. The urgency softens. The emotional charge weakens. The mind begins to feel bored with its own concerns. Boredom is not a problem here. It is a doorway. When worry becomes boring, it has lost its power. Buddhism teaches that boredom at night is not emptiness. It is the mind running out of fuel. When the mind runs out of fuel, rest becomes possible. Many people interrupt this moment by re-engaging, by searching for stimulation, or by trying to fix something. Zen encourages staying with the boredom. It is temporary. On the other side of it is quiet. Worry cannot survive without your participation. When you stop participating, it eventually collapses under its own weight. This collapse is gentle. It does not announce itself. It feels like drifting, like attention slipping away from the problem without effort. Zen does not require you to stop worrying instantly. It only asks you not to help it. You do not need to reassure worry. You do not need to answer it. You do not need to believe it. Allow it to speak into silence. Over time, the mind recognizes that worry is not being rewarded. It stops trying as hard. The thoughts slow. The gaps between them widen. Awareness begins to settle naturally. Buddhism teaches that the mind is self-regulating when it is not interfered with. When worry is not fueled, it fades just like any other mental activity. You may notice moments where worry disappears entirely, leaving a quiet space behind. This space may feel unfamiliar. The mind may try to fill it immediately. Zen invites patience. That space is rest. If worry returns, let it return. Each return will be weaker than the last. If it is not engaged, this is how habits dissolve. Even the most persistent worry cannot stay awake forever when it is not fed. The body understands this instinctively. As worry tires, the body grows heavier, muscles relax, the breath deepens, the nervous system shifts from vigilance to repair. This shift does not require your cooperation. It happens naturally when mental effort drops. Zen trusts this process completely. You do not need to monitor whether worry is fading. Monitoring would re-engage it. Simply allow awareness to remain soft and open. Eventually, worry loses coherence. It becomes fragments of thought without direction. These fragments dissolve into the background of awareness. What remains is a quiet readiness for sleep. Buddhism teaches that peace is not created by eliminating problems. It is discovered when the mind stops chasing them endlessly. At night, chasing has no purpose. Worry gets tired because it has nothing left to work with. It cannot move forward. It cannot resolve. It cannot protect to doubt. Without your energy, it rests. And when worry rests, sleep follows. This is not something you make happen. It happens when you stop preventing it. Allow worry to be as tired as it truly is. It has done enough for one day. Chapter 13. The night asks for nothing. Buddhism teaches that every moment carries its own request. Daytime asks for movement, attention, and response. Night asks for none of these. Night does not demand productivity, clarity, or readiness. It does not ask you to be better, faster, or more certain. It asks for nothing at all. The mind struggles with this because it has been trained to respond to demands. When no demand is present, it feels disoriented. It begins to invent tasks, replay obligations, and search for reasons to stay active. Zen recognizes this behavior as a misunderstanding of time. Night is not an extension of the day. It is a different condition entirely. When darkness arrives, the world itself withdraws its requests. Sounds fade, movement slows, social roles dissolve, expectations loosen. Even nature rests. Only the human mind insists on continuing, as if something is still required. Zen gently invites the mind to notice what the night is offering. Silence, stillness, and permission. Permission is the most important part. You are permitted to stop striving. You are permitted to stop explaining. You are permitted to stop preparing. None of these permissions must be earned. They arrive automatically with nightfall. The mind often resists this permission because it equates rest with neglect. Buddhism corrects this by pointing out that rest is not refusal. It is timing. Night is the time when nothing needs to be added to life. When you lie here now, notice how the environment supports this truth. The light is low. The body is horizontal. The world outside has grown quiet. These are not accidents. They are signals. Zen teaches listening to signals rather than overriding them. If night were asking something of you, it would be clear. There would be a sound, a call, a requirement, but there is none. The absence of demand is itself the message. The mind may argue that even if the night asks for nothing, life still does. Responsibilities still exist. Problems still exist. Buddhism does not deny this. It simply places them in the correct time. Life asks during the day. Night asks for rest so that life can be met again. When you respond to demands that are not present, you create strain. This strain does not improve outcomes. It only weakens the system that must respond later. Zen understands rest as intelligence. It is the intelligence of knowing when to stop. The night does not need you to be vigilant. It does not need you to be useful. It does not need you to think about tomorrow or fix yesterday. It does not need you at all. This can feel uncomfortable at first. Being unnecessary challenges the ego, but Zen sees this as liberation. When nothing is required, you are free. Free to breathe without purpose. Free to exist without explanation. Free to rest without guilt. The mind may try to fill the emptiness by creating internal demands. It may say you should reflect, plan, or improve. These are daytime activities wearing night disguises. Zen invites you to see through this disguise. At night, improvement is not requested. Presence is enough. Notice how the body responds when it realizes nothing is expected. The shoulders drop. The face softens. The breath becomes slower and deeper. These changes happen spontaneously when pressure is removed. Pressure always comes from expectation. When expectation dissolves, the body returns to balance. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises when we misread the moment. Treating night like day is one of the most common misreadings. Night is not asking you to perform. Night is asking you to release. This release does not require effort. It happens when you stop supplying effort to the wrong moment. If thoughts arise suggesting that rest must be justified, Recognize these thoughts as habits, not truths. You do not need to earn permission to stop. The night has already given it. Zen monks often speak about bowing to the night, not as a ritual, but as an inner gesture of acceptance. Acceptance that nothing more is required. Acceptance that effort can end. You are allowed to bow inwardly now. Let the night take what it offers as you continue to lie here. Notice how the sense of urgency fades when there is nothing to respond to. The mind begins to slow, not because it is forced, but because it has nothing to chase. This slowing is natural. When nothing is demanded, the nervous system shifts into repair. Hormones rebalance, muscles unwind, awareness softens. These processes cannot occur under pressure. The night creates the conditions for healing by asking for nothing. You do not need to fill the night with meaning. Meaning returns on its own in the morning. For now, meaning can rest. Zen teaches that rest is not empty time. It is time where life reorganizes itself quietly. Trust this reorganization. Nothing is required of you now. Nothing is expected. Nothing is missing. The night has already accepted you as you are. Allow yourself to accept it in return. And as you do, effort dissolves further, the body sinks deeper, and the mind grows less interested in doing anything at all. This is not sleep yet. This is readiness. The night asks for nothing, and because it asks for nothing, you are free to let everything go. Chapter 14. Nothing needs to be resolved. Buddhism teaches that the mind has a deep attachment to resolution. It believes that peace comes after answers, that rest comes after closure, that stillness comes after everything has been settled. Zen quietly reveals that this belief is the very thing that keeps the mind unsettled at night. Resolution is a daytime activity. It belongs to moments when action is possible, when dialogue can occur, when decisions can be made. At night, resolution becomes imagination. The mind tries to finish what cannot be finished, to solve what cannot be solved, to conclude what is not ready to conclude. This effort creates tension, not clarity. Zen invites you to notice how the urge to resolve feels in the body. It tightens the forehead. It sharpens attention. It keeps the nervous system alert. These are not signs of insight. They are signs of resistance to rest. Nothing needs to be resolved right now because nothing can be resolved right now. This is not resignation. It is accuracy. The mind often insists that if things remain unresolved, they will grow worse. Buddhism asks you to examine this belief gently. Many things soften on their own when they are allowed to rest. Many problems reveal themselves more clearly after sleep. Very few things benefit from being forced in the dark. Zen understands that clarity is a byproduct of rest, not its prerequisite. When you lie in bed trying to reach conclusions, you are asking the mind to perform without information. The day is over. The conditions that created the situation have changed. Without new input, the mind can only repeat itself. Repetition is not resolution. The mind does not like open loops. It tries to close them at all costs. At night, this tendency becomes especially strong. But Zen teaches that some loops close only when they are left alone. A story left unfinished at night often finishes itself by morning. This happens because sleep reorganizes perception. It softens emotional charge. It widens perspective. None of this can be commanded. It happens when the mind stops interfering. Buddhism teaches that unresolved does not mean broken. It means in process. Processes require time, not pressure. At night, time is still moving even if you are not thinking. Life is not paused because you stopped analyzing. The world continues. The body continues. Understanding continues quietly beneath awareness. Zen trusts this quiet continuation. The mind may argue that unresolved issues will keep you awake anyway, so you might as well think about them. Zen gently disagrees. Thinking does not resolve them. It only keeps them present. Presence without action is agitation. When the mind releases the need to resolve, something subtle happens. Attention softens. Thoughts lose their sharp edges. The sense of urgency fades. The nervous system recognizes that it is no longer being asked to prepare for action. Preparation without action is exhausting. Zen practice at night is the practice of postponement. Not avoidance, but wise postponement. You are not abandoning your life. You are placing it back into time. Everything that matters will still matter tomorrow. Everything that requires resolution will present itself again when it can be handled skillfully. Tonight is not that moment. Notice how many times in your life things worked themselves out without you forcing them. Conversations shifted, emotions settled, decisions clarified. This did not happen because you stayed awake thinking. It happened because you rested and returned with a clearer mind. Buddhism emphasizes trust in natural unfolding. The need to resolve everything now comes from fear, not wisdom. Fear believes that if it lets go, things will spiral. Wisdom knows that spirals often come from over-control. Zen allows incompleteness. Incompleteness is not failure. It is the natural state of living systems. Life is always mid-sentence. Trying to finish it at night only creates strain. As you lie here, you may feel the mind reaching for answers, conclusions, or certainty. Instead of following it, notice the reaching itself. Notice how it pulls you out of the body and into abstraction. Then gently allow attention to return to what is simple and present. The body does not need resolution to rest. The breath does not need answers to flow. The heart does not need conclusions to beat. Rest does not wait for clarity. Clarity often follows rest. Zen monks often speak about not knowing as a place of peace rather than anxiety. Not knowing at night is not ignorance. It is alignment with the limits of the moment. You are not meant to know everything before sleep. You are meant to rest. If a thought insists that something must be figured out now, remind yourself quietly that nothing needs to be resolved in order for the body to sleep. Sleep does not require understanding. It requires permission. Permission to leave things unfinished. Permission to let questions remain open. Permission to allow life to hold what you cannot. This permission is not reckless. It is compassionate. Compassion toward the mind means not demanding impossible clarity from it at night. As permission settles in, the body responds. Muscles soften, breath slows. The sense of striving diminishes. Awareness becomes less pointed and more spacious. This spaciousness is where rest lives. Nothing needs to be resolved. Not the past, not the future, not yourself. You are allowed to remain unfinished tonight. In this unfinished state, effort dissolves, vigilance fades, and the natural rhythm of sleep begins to emerge. Resolution can wait. The night is not asking for it. And as you allow things to remain exactly as they are without pushing for answers, the mind finally has nothing left to do. This is not emptiness. This is rest preparing itself. Chapter 15. The present moment is very small. Buddhism teaches that much of human suffering comes from trying to live in moments that are too large. The mind stretches itself across the past and the future, carrying memories, expectations, fears, and plans all at once. At night, this stretching becomes exhausting. Zen responds not by shrinking life, but by shrinking the moment. The present moment is very small. It does not contain your whole life. It does not contain your history, your identity, or your responsibilities. It contains only what is here now: sensation, breath, weight, quiet. When the mind tries to rest while carrying something too large, rest becomes impossible. The nervous system cannot relax. When it believes it must hold an entire story together, Zen teaches that peace begins when the moment is allowed to be small enough to hold gently. Right now, the present moment is not asking you to remember who you were earlier today. It is not asking you to anticipate who you must be tomorrow. It is not asking you to understand anything. It is asking only that you be here. Here does not mean alert. Here does not mean focused. Here means present in the simplest way. Notice how little is actually happening. The body is supported. The breath is moving on its own. The environment is still. This is the entire present moment. The mind often resists this simplicity because it believes that reducing the moment reduces meaning. Buddhism teaches the opposite. Meaning becomes clearer when it is not overloaded. Zen monks often return attention to very small experiences. The feeling of the ground beneath them, the sensation of air on the skin, the sound of silence. They do this not to escape life, but to meet it at a scale that does not overwhelm. At night, the scale becomes essential. The mind tries to bring the whole day into bed. Conversations, emotions, decisions, unfinished business, imagined futures, none of these belong to the present moment. They are imports from other times. Zen gently suggests leaving them where they are. The present moment does not need them. When you allow the moment to be small, something shifts in the body. Tension eases because there is less to carry. Attention softens because there is less to manage. Awareness becomes quieter because it is no longer stretched thin. Smallness is not limitation. It is relief. Buddhism teaches that the body lives only in the present moment. It does not replay the past or rehearse the future. When attention returns to the body, it returns to the only time that exists. This return does not require effort. It happens naturally when the mind stops expanding beyond what is here. If a thought arises about something larger, something outside this moment, notice it without following it. Gently return to what is small, the feeling of the bed, the rhythm of breathing, the sense of weight settling downward. These are not techniques. They are reminders. Reminders that the present moment is manageable. The mind becomes anxious when it believes it must hold too much. When it realizes that the present moment is very small, anxiety loosens its grip. Zen does not ask you to stay with the present moment perfectly. Perfection is another burden. It asks you to visit it again and again, each time noticing how simple it is. Each visit reduces strain. At the night, simplicity is the doorway to sleep. Sleep does not arrive when the mind is stretched across time. It arrives when attention rests fully in what is immediate. The present moment has no problems to solve. It has no questions to answer. It has no identity to defend. It simply exists. You may notice that as the moment shrinks, the sense of self softens. This is not losing yourself. It is releasing the effort of being someone. Zen understands that identity is a daytime activity. At night, identity can rest. You do not need to be anyone right now. You do not need to remember your role. You do not need to carry your name, your story, or your responsibilities into sleep. The present moment does not recognize these things. It recognizes only what is. This recognition is deeply calming. As the moment becomes smaller, awareness becomes more diffuse. The edges of perception soften. Time becomes less defined. This is the nervous system shifting toward rest. Zen does not interrupt this shift. It allows it to deepen. If the mind tries to expand the moment again, gently notice and return, not with force, not with frustration, with patience. Smallness is always available. The present moment does not change. Only attention moves. As attention rests here, the body continues to sink. Breath continues to flow. Muscles continue to release. These processes do not require understanding. Buddhism teaches that rest is not something added to the moment. It is revealed when the moment is no longer crowded. Tonight you are invited to let the moment be as small as it truly is. Nothing more is needed. In this smallness, there is room to rest. There is room to soften. There is room for sleep to arrive quietly, without effort. The present moment is very small, and because it is small, it can hold you completely. Chapter 16. Peace does not require effort. Buddhism teaches something that feels almost backwards to the modern mind. Peace is not created by effort. It is revealed when effort stops. The mind has been trained to believe that anything valuable must be earned, maintained, or protected through constant work. Because of this belief, even rest becomes something the mind tries to achieve. Zen quietly points out the problem. Effort is useful when there is something to do. At night, there is nothing to do. When effort continues without purpose, it becomes tension. This tension is what keeps the nervous system alert. Even when the body is ready to rest, the mind stays busy, not because it needs to, but because it has forgotten how to stop. Peace does not come from doing something correctly. It comes from stopping what is unnecessary. Zen does not instruct you to relax. Relaxation is another task. Zen invites you to notice what happens when you stop trying to relax. When the instruction drops, the body often relaxes on its own. This reveals an important truth. The body already knows how to settle. It does not need encouragement. It needs space. At night, effort often takes subtle forms. Trying to breathe slowly, trying to empty the mind, trying to stay present, trying to fall asleep. All of these are well-intentioned, but they keep the mind engaged. Engagement is the opposite of rest. Buddhism teaches that peace is not fragile. It does not need to be guarded. It is the natural state of the system when interference ends. Imagine a glass of water that has been shaken. The cloudiness does not clear because you try to clear it. It clears because you stop shaking it. The mind works the same way. Peace appears when effort ceases. Zen practice at night is not about perfect stillness. It is about allowing movement to finish on its own. When effort stops, thoughts slow naturally. When thoughts slow, the body follows. You may notice that the moment you stop trying to manage your state, something softens. The jaw releases, the shoulders drop. The breath deepens without instruction. These changes are not achievements. They are defaults. The mind resists this idea because it fears that without effort, something will be lost. Zen invites you to look at your own experience. How many times has effort at night actually helped you sleep? How many times has it kept you awake longer? Effort belongs to action. Sleep belongs to surrender. This surrender is not giving up on life. It is giving up on control in a moment where control has no role. Buddhism teaches that control is a tool, not an identity. When the tool is no longer needed, holding onto it creates strain. At night, control is not needed. The mind may argue that letting go of effort feels risky. It may say that vigilance keeps you safe. Zen responds by pointing to the countless nights you have slept before. Each night, effort faded. Each night, awareness softened. And each night, you woke again. Nothing collapsed. Peace does not require supervision. As you lie here now, notice any subtle effort still present. Effort to listen closely. Effort to understand. Effort to do this right. Gently allow that effort to fade. Understanding is not required for rest. The teachings do not need to be followed. They can dissolve too. Zen understands that peace arrives when nothing is being held, including the desire for peace. This is why peace cannot be chased. Chasing is effort. Peace waits for effort to end. At night, effort often hides behind good intentions. The mind believes it is helping by staying active. Buddhism gently reassures the mind that help is no longer needed. You can stop now. Stopping does not require a decision. It happens when you realize there is nothing to maintain. The present moment is stable without your involvement. The body is breathing. The heart is beating. Awareness is present. All of this is happening effortlessly. Peace is already here, underneath the effort. When effort drops, peace does not rush in dramatically. It seeps in quietly, like warmth returning to a cold room once the window is closed. This warmth feels like softness, like ease, like nothing needing attention. Zen does not ask you to hold on to this feeling. Holding would bring effort back. Simply allow it to exist in the background. If effort returns, let it return. It will fade again when it sees that it is unnecessary. The mind learns through experience, not instruction. Each moment you allow effort to dissolve teaches the nervous system that rest is safe. Over time, this learning becomes automatic. At night, peace does not need to be invited. It appears when effort steps aside. There is no technique here, no method to remember, no posture to maintain. Peace is not conditional. It does not depend on how well you listened. It does not depend on how still you are. It does not depend on understanding anything at all. Peace is what remains when striving ends. As effort continues to fade, awareness becomes less focused and more diffuse. The sense of doing dissolves. The sense of being remains. This state is not sleep yet, but it is close. It is the threshold where effort has ended, but awareness has not fully faded. Zen honors this threshold. It does not push past it. It allows the body to take over. From here, sleep arrives naturally, not as an achievement, but as a continuation. Peace did not require effort. It only required stopping. And now there is nothing left to do. Chapter 17. You have done enough for one day. Buddhism teaches that the day completes itself whether or not you approve of it. Completion is not something you grant through judgment. It arrives naturally when time moves on. When night comes, the day is already finished, regardless of how productive, successful, or disappointing it felt. The mind resists this truth because it measures worth through output. It believes the day must be evaluated, scored, and justified before rest is allowed. Zen gently dismantles this belief by pointing out something simple. The body does not need a verdict in order to rest. The body only needs permission. You have done enough for one day, not because everything went well, but because the day is over. Effort belongs to time. When time passes, effort ends. This idea can feel uncomfortable because the mind is accustomed to carrying unfinished business forward as a form of identity. It holds on to the sense of still needing to do more, be more, fix more. Buddhism sees this not as ambition, but as misunderstanding. Doing enough does not mean doing everything. It means doing what was possible within the conditions of the moment. Those conditions no longer exist. The energy you had earlier today is not the energy you have now. The clarity you had then is not the clarity you have now. Expecting yourself to continue operating as if nothing has changed is unrealistic. Zen emphasizes compassion toward changing conditions. Night is a changed condition. At night, the body is no longer built for effort. Muscles are ready to soften. Attention is ready to diffuse. Hormones shift toward repair. Ignoring these signals does not create strength. It creates strain. You have done enough, because the system that does the doing is tired. Buddhism teaches that wisdom includes knowing when to stop. Stopping is not quitting. It is respecting limits. Limits are not flaws. They are part of being alive. The mind often confuses limits with failure. Zen reframes limits as information. The information is simple. Today's capacity has been used. There is nothing wrong with this. The mind may replay moments from the day where you feel you fell short. It may highlight missed opportunities, mistakes, or moments of hesitation. Zen invites you to see these thoughts clearly. They are not instructions. They are echoes of a standard that no longer applies. Standards belong to action. Night belongs to rest. Evaluating yourself at night does not improve tomorrow. It only exhausts the present. Buddhism teaches that self-assessment has a time and place. That time is not when the nervous system is shifting towards sleep. Insight requires clarity. Clarity requires rest. Rest is not indulgence. It is maintenance. A tool that is not maintained becomes dull. A mind that is not rested becomes harsh. Zen understands that kindness toward the self is not softness. It is strategy. You have done enough because continuing would now be counterproductive. This is difficult for the mind to accept, because it fears that stopping means falling behind. Buddhism gently counters this fear by pointing to lived experience. When you rest well, you move more skillfully. When you do not, effort multiplies mistakes. Stopping at the right time preserves strength. At night, stopping is the right time. You are not abandoning your responsibilities. You are placing them back into time. They will return when your capacity returns. Zen does not require you to feel satisfied with the day. Satisfaction is optional. Completion is not. The day does not ask whether you are satisfied. It simply ends. You are allowed to end with it. Notice how the body responds when you accept that you have done enough. There is often a subtle release, as if something heavy has been put down. The chest softens. The breath lengthens. The face relaxes. These are signs of relief, not resignation. Relief comes from alignment with reality. Reality says the day is over. The mind may try to negotiate, saying that you could think a little more, plan a little better, try a little harder. Zen recognizes this voice as habit, not necessity. Habit does not decide when the day ends. Time does. You are not required to carry effort past its usefulness. Buddhism teaches that carrying effort beyond its proper time creates suffering. This suffering often masquerades as responsibility, but true responsibility includes rest. At night, rest is the responsible choice. If guilt arises, notice it gently. Guilt often appears when old rules are challenged. The rule here is the belief that worth must be constantly proven. Zen invites you to let this rule sleep. You do not need to prove anything right now. The body does not ask for proof. The night does not ask for justification. Sleep does not ask for permission. All that is needed is acceptance that today has been lived. Fully or imperfectly, consciously or distractedly, skillfully or clumsily, the day has passed. And because it has passed, you are finished with it. You may return to it tomorrow if needed, but tonight it no longer belongs to you. As this understanding settles, effort fades further. The sense of self that was working all day begins to dissolve. Roles loosen. Identity softens. This softening is not disappearance, it is rest. Zen teaches that the self, like everything else, needs downtime. It cannot perform continuously without distortion. Night allows the self to dissolve temporarily, so it can reform with clarity. You have done enough for one day. There is nothing left to complete, nothing left to fix, nothing left to carry. Allow the body to sink further into this understanding. Allow the mind to release its grip on the idea that more is required. Enough has already happened, and because enough has happened, you are free to rest. Chapter 18. The mind follows the body into rest. Buddhism teaches that the mind is not meant to lead at night. Leadership belongs to the body when rest approaches. During the day, the mind directs movement, decisions, and attention. At night, this hierarchy naturally reverses. The body knows when it is time to slow, soften, and repair. When the mind insists on staying in charge, rest becomes difficult. Zen does not criticize the mind for this insistence. It understands that the mind has been rewarded for leading for a long time. It has learned that control brings results. But rest is not a result. It is a condition. Conditions change when leadership changes. The body communicates rest through sensation rather than language. Heaviness, warmth, softness, and slowing are its signals. These signals do not require interpretation. They require allowance. When the mind tries to interpret them, it stays active. When it allows them, it quiets. Buddhism teaches that the mind follows naturally when it stops resisting the body's signals. You do not need to convince the mind to rest. You need to let the body rest first. Notice how rest begins in the body. The weight increases gradually. Muscles release in stages. The breath becomes less deliberate and more automatic. These changes do not require your attention. They happen on their own when effort fades. The mind often interrupts this process by checking, evaluating, or monitoring. It asks whether rest is happening correctly, whether sleep is close enough, whether something should be adjusted. Zen gently removes the need for this supervision. The body does not require oversight to rest. When you stop supervising, the body deepens its release. Buddhism emphasizes trust in physical intelligence. The body has rested successfully countless times without instruction. It knows the sequence. It knows the pace. It knows when to go deeper. The mind becomes calm, not by commanding it to calm, but by realizing it is no longer needed. At night, the body's rhythm becomes the dominant rhythm. Heartbeat slows. Breath lengthens. Neural activity shifts. These changes are not decisions. They are responses to safety. When the body feels safe, the mind follows. Zen teaches that safety is felt, not thought. Thinking about safety keeps the mind active. Feeling safety allows it to rest. As you lie here, notice how the body is supported. The surface beneath you carries your weight completely. You are not holding yourself up. The environment is stable. Nothing is moving you or asking you to move. These are signals of safety. The body responds first. The mind responds second. If the mind tries to lead again, simply allow attention to rest with the body's sensations without focusing sharply. Sharp focus reactivates effort. Soft awareness allows the body to continue its descent into rest. Buddhism does not rush this descent. It allows it to unfold layer by layer. The mind may notice moments where it drifts, where thoughts lose continuity, where awareness feels less defined. These moments are not mistakes. They are signs that the mind is beginning to follow. Following does not require surrendering awareness completely. It requires releasing direction. Zen teaches that direction is effort. When direction dissolves, rest deepens. You do not need to aim towards sleep. Aiming keeps the mind in front. When you stop aiming, the body naturally leads the way. At some point, the mind realizes there is nothing left to manage. This realization is not intellectual. It feels like relief, like stepping aside. The mind steps aside because the body has taken over. This handoff is gentle. It does not feel like losing control, or feels like no longer needing control. Buddhism teaches that control is heavy. Rest is light. As the body continues to soften, the mind begins to mirror this softness. Thoughts lose their edges. Images blur. Time stretches. The sense of self becomes less defined. These changes are not forced. They are contagious. The body relaxes, and the mind relaxes in response. Zen trusts this contagion. If you notice the mind becoming curious about the process, allow curiosity to fade without feeding it. Curiosity is still engagement. Rest requires disengagement. The body does not analyze rest. It inhabits it. When the mind finally accepts this, it follows willingly. Buddhism teaches that the mind is not the enemy of rest. It is simply late to learn how to rest. The body learned first. Tonight, the body is teaching the mind. You do not need to listen actively. Learning happens without effort. As the mind follows, awareness becomes broader and less centered. Sensations merge. Boundaries soften. The distinction between inside and outside becomes less clear. This is not confusion. It is the natural fading of separateness that precedes sleep. Zen does not label this state. Labels would sharpen awareness again. It allows the state to be what it is. At some point, the mind will fade almost entirely, not because it was silenced, but because it was no longer needed. The body will continue resting deeply. Sleep may arrive before you realize it has begun. This is how it happens when the body leads. The mind follows into rest not through instruction, but through trust. And when trust is complete, nothing more is required. Chapter 19. Sleep is a form of trust. Buddhism teaches that sleep is not merely a biological process. It is an act of trust. To sleep is to allow life to continue without supervision, to let go of watching, managing, and protecting. The mind often resists this because it believes vigilance equals safety. Zen gently reveals that true safety does not come from constant control, but from alignment with what is real. Each night when you fall asleep, you trust that the world will not collapse in your absence. You trust that the body will continue breathing, that the heart will continue beating, that consciousness will return in the morning. This trust is so familiar that it is rarely noticed, yet it is profound. At night, fear often disguises itself as responsibility. The mind says that staying alert is wise, that rest is risky, that letting go invites danger. Buddhism asks you to look at your own history. You have slept countless nights, and each time, life continued. This continuation is not fragile. Zen teaches that trust is not something you create through thought. It is something you allow by stopping interference. The mind wants guarantees. Sleep offers none. And yet sleep arrives anyway because life does not require permission to unfold. When you lie here now, you may notice the last traces of vigilance, subtle checking, quiet listening for problems, faint scanning for threats. These traces are habits, not necessities. They persist because the mind has not fully accepted that nothing is required of it. Sleep begins when trust replaces vigilance. Trust does not mean believing that nothing bad will ever happen. It means recognizing that vigilance at night does not prevent what cannot be controlled. It only prevents rest. Buddhism teaches acceptance of uncertainty, not as resignation, but as realism. The future cannot be managed from the bed. Attempting to do so only exhausts the present. Zen does not promise safety. It offers peace through honesty. Honesty says that control ends at night. As you allow trust to deepen, the body responds immediately. Muscles soften further. The breath becomes less noticeable. Awareness widens and thins. These are not signs of weakness. They are signs that the system recognizes it no longer needs to stay on guard. The mind may try to reassert itself with a final thought, a reminder, a question, or a concern. These are last attempts to maintain relevance. Zen does not push them away. It simply does not answer them. Unanswered, they fade. Trust grows not because you convince yourself to trust, but because you stop proving distrust. Each moment you allow the body to sink without supervision is a moment of trust. Each breath that moves on its own is evidence that control is unnecessary. Buddhism teaches that trust is learned through experience, not belief. You do not need to tell yourself that it is safe to sleep. You only need to stop interrupting the body's wisdom. The body already trusts the night. When you stop overriding this trust, the mind gradually aligns with it. At some point, the mind no longer feels the need to watch. It steps back quietly. Awareness remains, but without urgency. This is the threshold where sleep begins to take shape. Zen honors this threshold by not naming it. Naming would call the mind forward again. It allows the process to remain unnamed. Sleep does not require faith. It requires surrender of control. Surrender here is not giving up. It is letting go of a role that is no longer needed. The role of watcher, the role of planner, the role of protector. These roles served you earlier today. They do not serve you now. As trust deepens, the sense of boundary softens. Inside and outside feel less distinct. Time becomes vague. Thought loses structure. These changes are not something you need to follow. They happen naturally when trust replaces effort. Zen teaches that the deepest rest comes when even the idea of resting disappears. At that point, there is nothing to do and no one doing it. Sleep arrives quietly, like a tide rising without announcement. You do not notice the exact moment it happens, because noticing requires attention, and attention has already relaxed. This is how trust completes itself, by letting go of watching. Sleep is a form of trust, and as trust settles fully, there is nothing left to manage, nothing left to monitor, nothing left to hold. Life continues. You are allowed to rest within it. Chapter 20. Let go and disappear into rest. Buddhism teaches that rest does not arrive by addition, but by subtraction. It comes not when something new is achieved, but when everything unnecessary is released. At this point, nothing more needs to be understood, remembered, or practiced. The teachings themselves are no longer needed. Even listening can soften. Letting go now is not an action. It is the absence of holding. Earlier, the mind needed guidance. It needed reassurance. It needed direction. Now even that need has faded. What remains is a quiet readiness to disappear into rest without ceremony. Zen speaks of disappearance not as loss, but as relief. The self that worked all day, that evaluated, planned, worried, and protected, is allowed to dissolve temporarily. This self does not die. It simply sleeps. Nothing essential is being abandoned. At night, disappearance is natural. Think of how a wave does not vanish when it reaches the shore. It spreads, thins, and becomes part of something larger. In the same way, awareness does not end. It widens, softens, and loses its edges. This is rest. You do not need to watch this happen. Watching would bring effort back. The body already knows the way forward. The mind has followed as far as it needs to. Now even following can stop. Buddhism teaches that when grasping ends, suffering ends. Grasping has already ended here. There is nothing left to hold, nothing left to protect, nothing left to finish. If a thought appears, it floats without weight. If a sensation appears, it dissolves without meaning. If awareness remains, it rests without focus. This state does not need to be maintained. Maintenance is effort. What remains now is effortless. Zen does not describe sleep as falling, it describes it as returning to the body, returning to rhythm, returning to a state where no story is required. The mind may still flicker briefly, like a light that has not fully gone out. This flicker is not resistance, it is momentum finishing itself. Allow it to finish. There is no instruction to follow now, no insight to apply, no awareness to hold. The system is closing gently, like a door that does not need to be pushed. At this point, even the idea of letting go can be released. Nothing is expected of you anymore. The breath continues without awareness. The body continues without direction. The night continues without supervision. Zen teaches that true rest is when even the witness dissolves, not into darkness, but into quiet continuity. Sleep does not arrive as a moment you notice. It arrives as a moment you miss. One instant awareness is present. The next it is not concerned with being present. That missing is not failure. It is success without effort. Let go now, not deliberately, but completely. Let the last traces of identity loosen. Let the sense of being someone somewhere soften until it no longer needs definition. You do not need to go anywhere. Rest comes to you. There is no need to remember these words. They do not need to be carried forward. They have done their work and can fade like everything else. If awareness remains for a little while longer, let it remain without direction. If it fades, let it fade without concern. Nothing important depends on what happens next. The night holds everything now. Let go of the day. Let go of the mind. Let go of even letting go, and disappear into rest. The way all living things do when effort finally ends. There is nothing left to do. There is no one left to do it. Only rest unfolding on its own. Chapter 21. There is nothing you need to wake up. As Buddhism teaches that even identity is temporary, even the sense of being someone with a shape, a role and a direction. During the day, identity is useful. It allows you to function, respond, and navigate the world. At night, identity has no task, and because it has no task, it does not need to remain assembled. Sleep is not only rest for the body, it is rest from being someone. The mind often believes it must hold itself together, as if letting identity loosen would mean disappearing forever. Zen gently reveals that identity loosens every night and returns every morning without effort. You do not rebuild yourself consciously. You simply wake up. Nothing essential is lost in between. This is why Buddhism does not fear disappearance. It understands disappearance as a rhythm, not an ending. Forms dissolve so they can reform. Tension releases so balance can return. At this point in the night, there is nothing you need to wake up, as no version of yourself needs to be preserved, rehearsed, or protected. The future self does not require preparation. It will arise naturally when conditions return. The idea that you must carry yourself through the night is an illusion. Zen teaches that the self is like a knot made of habits, roles, memories, and expectations. When attention relaxes, the knot loosens. When the knot loosens, effort dissolves. When effort dissolves, rest deepens beyond awareness. You do not need to supervise this process. Notice how even the sense of listening may be fading now. Words may blur, meaning may thin. Attention may drift in and out. This is not something going wrong. This is something completing itself. Buddhism teaches that completion often looks like disappearance. At night, disappearance is gentle. It has no edge, no fear, no event. It is simply the gradual fading of what is unnecessary. You are not required to stay aware. Awareness is allowed to sleep too. There is nothing you need to remember. There is nothing you need to hold. There is nothing you need to become. Even the idea of improvement can rest now. Zen does not carry goals into sleep. Those belong to daylight. Night belongs to dissolution. The nervous system resets itself not through effort, but through absence of demand. At this depth, even trust no longer needs to be felt. Trust has already done its work. Vigilance has already ended. Control has already been released. What remains is rhythm. Breath continues. The heart continues. Life continues. You do not participate in this continuation. It happens for you. Buddhism teaches that the deepest peace is not experienced as pleasure or calm, but as neutrality so complete. It does not register as anything at all. This neutrality is not emptiness. It is fullness without contrast. There is nothing to compare it to. If awareness flickers briefly, let it flicker. If thought appears faintly, let it dissolve. If nothing appears, let nothing appear. Nothing requires response. The night does not ask you to stay present. Sleep does not ask you to succeed. Rest does not ask you to arrive. You are already where you need to be. The body has fully taken over now. Systems are shifting. Muscles are slack. Attention is no longer centralized. The sense of inside and outside may be unclear or gone. This is not loss. This is rest completing itself. Zen teaches that when even the witness disappears, peace remains. Peace does not need someone to experience it. It exists as the absence of disturbance. There is nothing you need to wake up as. Morning will assemble what is needed on its own. Thoughts will return. Identity will return. Roles will return. None of them need guarding now. For now, you are allowed to be unformed, unnamed, unassigned, unnecessary. And in this unneeded state, the body rests most deeply. There is no closing instruction. There is no ending. Only the quiet continuation of rest, moving deeper on its own. Long after these words are no longer heard, nothing more follows. Nothing needs to, only sleep. Unfolding without effort. Chapter 22. Rest continues without you. Buddhism teaches that the most profound rest is the rest that does not require participation. Earlier in the night, effort softened. Later, identity loosened. Now, even the sense of being present is no longer needed. What remains is a quiet continuation that happens entirely on its own. Rest does not stop when awareness fades. Rest does not depend on attention. Rest does not require a witness. This is difficult for the thinking mind to understand, because the mind believes that if it is not involved, nothing is happening. Zen gently dissolves this belief by pointing to life itself. Life continues constantly without your supervision. Cells repair, systems rebalance, energy redistributes. None of this waits for permission. Sleep is simply life, doing what it already knows how to do. At this depth, there is no need to stay aware. Awareness has already done its part. It guided the system towards safety. Now it can dissolve like everything else that has finished its work. Zen does not cling to awareness. It allows awareness to rest too. You may notice long gaps now, spaces where there is no clear thought, no clear sensation, no clear sense of self. These gaps are not empty in a threatening way. They are full of quiet activity that does not announce itself. This is the bodhicept's domain. The body does not narrate. The body does not evaluate. The body does not hurry. It simply continues. Buddhism teaches that when the body takes over completely, the mind no longer needs to hover nearby. The mind can step back without consequence. Nothing essential is lost. In fact, something essential is restored. Deep rest repairs what effort cannot. At this stage, even the idea of sleep may have faded. There is no anticipation, no waiting, no sense of arrival. Time may feel absent or distorted. This is not disorientation. It is the nervous system fully disengaging from external tracking. Zen honors this state by not naming it. Names would pull awareness back. There is nothing to listen for now. There is nothing to notice. There is nothing to follow. Words themselves may feel distant or meaningless. This is not failure to understand. It is understanding no longer being required. Buddhism teaches that wisdom includes knowing when to stop knowing. The mind has stopped. What continues is rhythm. It continues in the background without being felt. The heart continues without being heard. The body continues without being sensed. You are not doing any of this. You are not needed for any of this. The sense of you has softened enough to no longer interfere. Zen describes this as the night fully holding you, not metaphorically, but functionally. The night removes the need for vigilance, identity, and awareness, leaving only biological and energetic continuity. This continuity does not feel like anything, And because it does not feel like anything, it is deeply restful. If awareness briefly reappears, it will find nothing to engage with. No tension, no story, no task. With nothing to do, it will fade again on its own. This coming and going does not matter. Rest is uninterrupted. Buddhism teaches that peace is not fragile. It does not break when attention wanders. It does not disappear when consciousness dims. It remains as the baseline when disturbance ends. Disturbance has ended. There is no instruction to follow now. Instructions belong to effort. Effort has already dissolved. There is no need to let go anymore. Letting go has already happened. What remains cannot be dropped, because it is not being held. This is rest continuing without you. Morning will come in its own time. The self will reassemble without guidance. Thought will return when it is useful. Identity will return when it is needed. None of this concerns the night. For now, there is only ongoing rest, deepening quietly, without direction, without awareness, without interruption. Nothing is missing. Nothing is late. Nothing is required. Rest continues. And there is no one left who needs to know that it does. Chapter 23. Nothing is happening, and that is enough. Buddhism teaches that the deepest peace is not something you enter. It is something that remains when everything else stops happening. At this point in the night, there is no journey, no transition, no movement toward anything. What is present now is not an experience in the usual sense. It does not arrive. It does not change. It does not resolve. It simply continues quietly, without asking to be noticed. The mind has already loosened its grip. The body has already settled into its own rhythms. Awareness itself may be faint, scattered, or absent entirely. This is not something to correct. This is the natural condition when effort has fully ended. Nothing is happening. And that is enough. The mind often believes that stillness must contain something in order to be valid. It expects calm to feel pleasant, silence to feel meaningful, rest to feel noticeable. Buddhism gently dissolves this expectation by revealing that true rest often feels like nothing at all, not empty in a disturbing way, but neutral in a way that requires no response. At this depth, neutrality is not boredom. It is completion. There is no longer a sense of passing time. The idea of before and after no longer applies. The body is not waiting for sleep, because sleep is already happening in layers beneath awareness. The nervous system has shifted into maintenance, repair, and recalibration. These processes do not produce sensation. They do not announce themselves. They continue regardless of attention. Zen does not describe this state because description would disturb it. If awareness flickers briefly, it may search for something to hold on to, some point of reference, some familiar sensation. Finding nothing, it softens again. This searching and dissolving may repeat several times. Each time the search grows weaker. Eventually, even the impulse to search disappears. Nothing replaces it, and nothing needs to. Buddhism teaches that peace is not an object that appears in awareness. It is what remains when awareness no longer needs objects. When perception no longer organizes itself around meaning, the system rests at its most basic level. This level does not feel peaceful. It does not feel calm. It does not feel safe or unsafe. It does not feel at all. And because it does not feel, it does not disturb. The body rests most deeply here, where sensation is minimal and thought is absent. Muscles release tension that was not consciously held. Neural patterns reorganize themselves without guidance. Hormonal systems rebalance. Memory consolidates. Energy restores itself. None of this requires the self. The self has already stepped aside. Zen teachings often say that the deepest sleep is the sleep where even the idea of sleeping disappears. This is that region. There is no recognition of rest. There is only rest functioning. Nothing is being observed. Nothing is being recorded. Nothing is being remembered. This is not loss. This is efficiency. The human system was never meant to remain conscious at all times. Consciousness is a tool, not a constant. When the tool is no longer needed, it powers down. Buddhism does not resist this powering down. It honors it. At this depth, there is no practice. Practice has ended. There is no letting go. Letting go has already occurred. There is no awareness of breath, body, or space. These have merged into a background process that no longer presents itself to experience. The absence of experience is not a void, it is a functioning state. Zen sometimes refers to this as the Great Rest, not because it is dramatic, but because it is complete. Nothing is being done incorrectly. Nothing is being delayed. Nothing is missing. The night has fully taken over. If the mind briefly resurfaces, it may wonder whether something should be happening. This wondering dissolves quickly because there is no answer. The question itself has no traction. With nothing to engage, the mind recedes again. This ebb and flow is natural. Buddhism teaches that even confusion rests eventually when it is not fed. Confusion requires contrast. At this depth, there is no contrast. There is no light and dark, no inside and outside, no here and there, only undifferentiated continuation. This continuation does not belong to you. It is not personal. It is not owned. It is simply life maintaining itself at its quietest level. The night does not hold stories. It does not hold identity. It does not hold goals or regrets. It holds only processes. Processes do not worry. Processes do not hurry. Processes do not remember. They continue. Zen wisdom recognizes that the most trustworthy state is the one that does not require trust. At this level, even trust is unnecessary. Nothing is being risked. Nothing is being watched. Nothing is being prepared. Rest has become autonomous. This is why the deepest rest often leaves no memory. You do not remember the hours when nothing was happening. You only remember the edges, the falling asleep, the waking up. The middle disappears completely. Buddhism does not see this disappearance as a gap. It sees it as success. When consciousness disappears into rest, the system is doing exactly what it is meant to do. There is no lesson here, no insight, no takeaway. Anything that could be taken would require a taker. There is no taker now. The words playing now are not meant to be heard. They are meant to fade without resistance, like sound dissolving into distance. If they register at all, they do so faintly, without meaning, without narrative, without direction. Meaning has already stepped aside. Zen often says that true silence is not the absence of sound, but the absence of the need to interpret sound. At this depth, interpretation has ended. If a sound occurs in the environment, it may not register. If it does, it passes without reaction. The nervous system remains settled. The body remains at rest. Nothing interrupts this state, because nothing is guarding it. Buddhism teaches that guarding creates tension. Unguarded states are naturally stable. Stability does not require awareness. The idea that something must be happening in order for rest to be real is a habit of the waking mind. The sleeping system does not share this belief. It knows that nothing happening is the condition for restoration. At this depth, even the idea of depth is meaningless. There is no scale, no progression, no deeper or shallower. There is only ongoing neutrality. The self does not exist here, not because it was removed, but because it is unnecessary. When it becomes necessary again, it will return without effort. Morning will reconstruct identity automatically. Thought will resume when light returns. Language will reform. Memory will reconnect. None of this requires preparation. None of this requires vigilance. For now, there is only continuation without commentary. Buddhism teaches that when nothing is happening, suffering cannot occur, because suffering requires interpretation. Interpretation requires a self. The self is absent. This is why this state is safe, without feeling safe. There is no one here to feel unsafe. The night continues to hold the body in this way, quietly, efficiently, without drama. There is no peak, no climax, no conclusion, just ongoing rest, doing what it does best when it is not disturbed. Nothing is happening, and that is enough. There is nothing after this, nothing to follow, nothing to arrive at, only the quiet continuation of sleep. Long after these words have ceased to matter, long after awareness has softened into absence, long after effort has dissolved completely, rest continues without you. Chapter 24. Nothing returns and nothing is lost. Buddhism teaches that when the mind finally releases its last attachment, something unexpected happens. There is no disappearance and no return. There is simply continuation without ownership. At this depth of rest, nothing comes back into awareness and nothing has gone missing. The idea of loss no longer applies because there is no one left measuring what remains. This is not a state that can be entered deliberately. It is what remains when all effort, all identification, and all participation have already ended. The system is no longer transitioning. It is no longer settling. It has settled. Nothing returns, and nothing is lost. Earlier, there were thoughts, sensations, fragments of awareness appearing and fading. Now even fading has stopped being noticeable. There is no longer a sense of something leaving or something arriving. The flow has flattened into quiet continuity. This is not emptiness, as the mind once feared it. It is fullness without contrast. The mind used to believe that continuity required awareness, that existence required witnessing. Buddhism gently dissolves this belief by showing that life continues perfectly well without being noticed. The heart does not wait to be heard. The breath does not wait to be felt. Repair does not wait to be understood. At this depth, there is no experience of rest. There is only rest functioning. Zen does not attempt to describe this, because description belongs to the waking world. Language requires separation. At this depth, separation has thinned beyond usefulness. Inside and outside, here and there, body and space are no longer arranged into meaningful categories. There is no center, and because there is no center, nothing needs to be protected. The idea of returning implies that something left. The idea of loss implies that something was owned. Neither applies here. Nothing departed, and nothing belonged to anyone in the first place. The self that once carried experience has already stepped aside, not violently, not dramatically, but simply by no longer being required. This is why there is no memory of this state when waking occurs. Memory requires a recorder. The recorder is absent. What remains cannot be recalled because it was never framed as an event. Buddhism does not mourn this absence of memory. It recognizes it as a sign of depth. The deepest rest leaves no trace. If awareness reappears briefly, it does not find anything to reattach to. There is no story to resume, no narrative to continue, no orientation to recover. Finding nothing, awareness dissolves again without resistance. This is not instability, it is completion. Zen teaches that disturbance requires friction. Friction requires contact. Contact requires separation. At this level, separation has thinned enough that friction cannot form. Nothing returns, because nothing is being held in reserve. Nothing is lost because nothing was ever possessed. The body continues in a state that does not feel like anything. Sensation has withdrawn to the level of background regulation. Muscles are slack without being noticed. The breath is shallow or deep without awareness of either. Neural activity has slowed into patterns that no longer support narrative thought. This is not unconsciousness in the dramatic sense. It is absence of need. Need has ended. The mind once believed that without need, there would be nothing. Buddhism reveals the opposite. Without need, there is continuity without strain. The system operates without interference. Zen sometimes refers to this as the great ordinary state, not because it is dull, but because it is free of interpretation. It is life functioning at its simplest level. At this point, even silence is not perceived as silence. Silence is a contrast with sound. Contrast requires awareness. Without awareness, there is no silence and no sound. There is only ongoing neutrality. This neutrality is not numbness. Numbness is an experience. This is beyond experience. Nothing is happening, but not in a way that needs to be named. The night holds the body in this condition effortlessly. Time passes without being counted. Hours dissolve without awareness of their movement. The system resets itself without instruction. Nothing interrupts this process because nothing is guarding it. Buddhism teaches that guarding is the final form of suffering. When guarding ends, suffering has no structure left to inhabit. There is no guarding here, no vigilance, no monitoring, no checking. Even the idea of rest has dissolved. The language playing now is not meant to be processed. If it registers at all, it does so as vibration without meaning. Meaning requires reference. Reference requires identity. Identity has already loosened beyond function. Words pass through without landing. Nothing returns to meet them. This is why there is no effort to stay asleep. Staying implies holding. Holding has ended. Sleep is no longer something that happens to you. It is simply the condition that remains when everything unnecessary has stopped. Buddhism does not treat this as mystical. It treats it as practical. The system needs periods where nothing is required, where nothing is interpreted, where nothing is remembered. These periods restore what effort erodes. At this depth, there is no fear because fear requires anticipation. Anticipation requires a future. The future is not present here. There is no peace, because peace requires contrast with disturbance. Disturbance has already ended. There is no awareness of safety because safety requires danger. Danger is a concept that cannot form without self-reference. What remains cannot be threatened because there is nothing to threaten. The night continues holding the body in this way, not gently and not forcefully, but automatically. There is no quality to describe because qualities require perception. This is rest at its most efficient. When morning eventually arrives, it will not pull you out of this state abruptly. Systems will reassemble gradually. Sensation will return. Thought will reform. Identity will reconstitute itself around memory and language. This reconstruction will feel seamless because there is no memory of what happened in between. Nothing will feel missing. Nothing will feel lost. This is the mark of deep rest. Buddhism teaches that the best rest is the rest you do not notice having. The body wakes restored without understanding why. At this depth, restoration is already underway. Nothing needs to return for this to be complete. Nothing needs to be held. Nothing needs to be understood. Only continuation, without witness, without interruption, without effort. Nothing returns, and nothing is lost. Rest continues exactly as it should. Long after these words dissolve into irrelevance, long after awareness has softened beyond recognition, long after the idea of night itself has ceased to matter. There is nothing after this, only continuation, doing what it does best when left alone. Chapter 25. Nothing ever interrupted this. Buddhism teaches something subtle and easily missed by the waking mind. There was never a moment when rest needed to begin, because rest was never absent. What appeared as tension, effort, vigilance, and identity were surface movements. temporary patterns passing over something that never changed beneath them. At this depth, that beneath is all that remains. Nothing ever interrupted this. Earlier in the night, there seemed to be a journey, a descent, a sequence of letting go. That appearance belonged to the mind while it was still active. Now even that storyline has dissolved. There is no before and after here, no transition, no progression, only the quiet recognition, no longer conscious, that nothing essential ever left. The body is resting in a way that does not feel like rest. The word no longer applies. Feeling requires awareness, and awareness has thinned beyond usefulness. What remains is regulation without sensation, repair without experience, continuation without memory. Zen does not describe this as deep sleep or unconsciousness. It avoids labels entirely. Labels create edges, and edges are no longer present. This is not a state you are in. It is what remains when states are no longer formed. The idea that something had to settle, soften, or arrive was always a misunderstanding created by attention. Attention organized experience into steps. Without attention, there are no steps. There is only what has always been quietly functioning. Nothing ever interrupted this. The heart has not paused. The breath has not waited. The body has not needed direction. Cells have continued their work without knowing they were doing so. Systems have balanced themselves without announcing the process. Life has moved exactly as it always does when it is not being watched. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises from interference, not from existence. When interference ends, existence continues without disturbance. That continuation is what remains here. There is no observer left to be impressed by this. There is no awareness left to feel comforted by it. Comfort requires comparison. Comparison requires memory. Memory is absent. What remains cannot be described as calm, because calm implies the absence of agitation. Agitation no longer forms here. It cannot arise without structure. Structure has dissolved. The mind once believed it needed to hold reality together. It believed vigilance prevented collapse. Zen reveals the opposite. Reality does not require holding. Holding was the source of strain. Without holding, nothing falls apart. Nothing ever interrupted this. Time does not move forward here. It does not move backward. It does not move at all. The mechanisms that track time are offline. The body has entered a mode where sequence is irrelevant. Processes complete themselves without being ordered. There is no waiting. There is no duration. There is no sense of how long this has been or will be. The night is no longer perceived as night. Darkness is not known. Light is not anticipated. The concept of waking has no meaning. Meaning itself has thinned beyond function. This is not void. Void is an idea. This is not presence. Presence is also an idea. This is what remains when ideas no longer form. Zen sometimes points to this indirectly by saying that the ordinary mind is the way, not the thinking mind, but the functioning mind beneath thought. The mind that breathes, heals, and regulates without commentary. That mind has always been here. Nothing ever interrupted this. If there is any trace of awareness left, it does not locate itself anywhere. There is no sense of being inside a body or outside it. Boundaries have no relevance. Location requires perspective. Perspective is absent. The words playing now do not seek understanding. Understanding is unnecessary. If they are heard at all, they are heard without recognition, like distant vibration, with no source and no destination. They do not land. They do not echo. They pass through without altering anything. This is not dissociation. Dissociation is an experience. This is beyond experience. There is no disconnection because there is no connection to sever. Buddhism teaches that the deepest truth is not something you realize. It is something that remains when realization is no longer possible. This is that remaining. The idea of interruption implies that something stable was disturbed. But what is stable here cannot be disturbed because it does not depend on form. Form comes and goes. This does not. Earlier, the sense of self dissolved. The dissolution was not an event. It was simply the cessation of a habit of narrating, owning, and identifying. When the habit stopped, what remained was already complete. Nothing ever interrupted this. The body continues resting without knowing it is resting. The brain continues cycling through patterns that do not support awareness. The nervous system continues regulating without reporting. There is no feedback loop, because feedback is unnecessary. This is efficiency without intention. Zen does not glorify this. It does not call it special. Specialness requires contrast. There is no contrast here. It is simply how things function when nothing interferes. Eventually, something will reassemble. Light will change. Sensation will return. Thought will reform. Identity will appear again, not because it was stored somewhere, but because conditions will once again support it. That reassembly will feel seamless. There will be no sense that anything was missing, no sense that anything was paused, because nothing ever was, nothing ever interrupted this, and because nothing was interrupted, nothing needs to resume. What continues is what always continued. Long after these words stop, long after sound fades, long after awareness is no longer even a possibility, this continuation remains exactly as it is. Unchanged, unobserved, undisturbed. There is no ending here, only the absence of interruption, and that absence has always been enough. There is nothing left to carry now, nothing left to follow, nothing left to remember. The night has already taken everything that needed to be taken, and what remains does not need attention. You do not need to hold awareness. You do not need to stay present. You do not need to listen anymore. The body knows where it is. The mind has gone quiet in its own way, and life continues without effort. Whatever comes next will come on its own, and whatever does not come does not matter. For now there is no task, no direction, no identity to maintain, only rest, continuing quietly, exactly as it should, long after these words have faded, and long after there is anyone left to hear them.